Welcome back to Yesterday Today, bringing you the best of yesterday's sounds today. We did make it out of the New Mexico desert alive. We're back home. We're safe. Everything's fine. Nobody died. Everything's good. I'm Jake, by the way. McLean's here with me.
Jake, I'll be square with you. I kind of felt like calling into the studio today. I think we've spent plenty of time together over the last week, and I felt like we could use some time away from each other.
I did come very close to killing McLean out in the desert.
Some things were said, some things were done that may not have been the most uplifting to one another, but I think we've worked through a lot of that now.
It was a growing moment. Anyway, today we're going to present some detective shows from old time radio. That's what we're going to do. First up in the docket, I have probably, the show people tend to think of when they think of old-time radio private detectives, and that is The Adventures of Sam Spade. However, this is an episode from the last season of the show, which starred a man named Steve Dunn, who was the title character for the final season of the show after Howard Duff was no longer portraying Samuel Spade. I actually quite like Steve Dunn's portrayal of Sam Spade. I don't quite know why. I just do. But anyway, this is The Dog Bed Caper from December the 1st, 1950.
The National Broadcasting Company presents The Adventures of Sam Spade, Detective.
Sam Spade Detective Agency.
Me, sweetheart.
Sam, would you mind telling me where you are?
Not at all, Effie, not at all. Let's see, I'm at the Ill-Rig Dana Rab Etile Sea Grog.
I don't understand it, Sam, but I think I caught the word grog.
Oh, you're shrewd, Effie. You see, I'm on the inside, and the lettering is printed on the outside. Now, if you'll wait, I'll go outside and read it the right way, and then come inside and
Never mind, I've already guessed. You're at George's Elite Bar and Grill.
Trapped.
Sam, after me, you promised me you wouldn't.
Me? I promised? Me?
You did, Sam. You promised faithfully to stay away from bars. You know how hard television is on your eyes. Have you got your glasses?
One in each hand. Fill them up, George.
Oh, Sam, I heard that. What will people think?
They'll never know, Effie. I always drink here under another name.
Oh.
Just a little of the hair of the dog that bit me, Effie. But don't worry about me. Although it's true I have been dogging it and have been hounded from tree to tree, I am frisky as ever and will be in to unleash my canine chronicle, namely, the dog bed caper, or he who lies down with dogs gets up with murder, or, condensed for easy reading,
For NBC, William Spear, radio's outstanding producer-director of mystery and crime drama, brings you the greatest private detective of them all in The Adventures of Sam Spade. Effie?
Here I am, Sam.
Here I am, Sam. Effie, did you ever write poetry in school?
Well, I was known as the Emily Dickinson of Central High.
I thought you had a touch of internal rhyme scheme there.
I doodled a little poem about you today.
Really? Well, redoodle.
There was a detective named Spade with oodles of brains in his head.
Clever, clever.
But when he took up drinking, he forgot about thinking.
Now give me the punchline.
And Effie has stayed quite unpaid.
Well, a little rough, but cute.
Did you get the idea, Sam?
Never could make any sense out of poetry. Ready?
It's getting close to Christmas, Sam, and
Pencil
I've
point?
used my last pencil, and I don't really have enough money to buy any...
Please, Effie, I have no head for figures.
All right, I give up.
From Samuel Spade, license number 137596. Subject, the dog bed caper.
Oh, Sam, I hope this is going to be all about dogs. I belong to the tail waggers, you know.
Yeah.
And I've read all the books by Jack London.
Yeah.
I just think life
Down,
is...
Effie. Strangely enough, you will not meet a single dog in this story. Actually, this narrative has little indeed to do with our four-footed friends or their beds. And I'd change the title now, except that it's already gone out for publicity. Dear Dundee, it all started with a phone call to my secretary, Miss Effie Perrine, a doll, requesting my inimitable services at the investment counseling firm of Cameron Incorporated. Clearing everything off my desk, 2 shoes with feet in them, my own, I went over. The firm of Cameron Incorporated was obviously not for the pushcart set. It was plush, ankle-deep rugs, imported drapes, and the receptionist. She had a plushness all of her own. I said hello in my plushiest voice, and she liked it. She said so.
Oh, I like the way you said that. Say it again.
Life is too short to go back even for a moment. The past is a dead thing, the present dying, only the future alive and vibrant. However, hello.
Is there something?
There is. Could I ask a question?
Why not?
I will rephrase the question. What time do you stop working this evening?
Around 6.
Care to have...
Why not?
There's a little bar around the corner, okay?
Why not?
Why not, indeed? Bring your own money? Well, come anyway. Your name?
Celeste.
Mine's Sam Spade. Who's Mr. Briggs? He called me.
Major Briggs? Why, he's our chief accountant.
I just happened to have my door open. Did I hear someone inquiring about me?
This is Mr. Spade, Major Briggs.
How do you do, Major?
It's a pleasure to meet you in person, Mr. Spade. I'm the man who called you, you know.
I'm grateful, sir. Now, what is it I can do for you and Mr. Cameron?
Oh, it's not for me that I called. I haven't a worry in the world, and it's Miss Cameron.
Oh.
Old Cameron's been dead for many years now.
I see.
Whatever she wants, Mr. Spade, do a good job. We are all counting on you. Will you please announce Mr. Spade, Miss Roberts?
Certainly, Major.
If you'd excuse me.
Nice to have met you, Major.
Miss Cameron?
Yes?
Mr. Spade's here.
Send him in, please.
You're on, Sam. Have fun.
Think I might?
Why not?
That girl had the most beautiful double entendre in town. Well, to get on, Adela Cameron was a career woman, around 29, although the tailored suit made fine detective work difficult. No makeup, severe hairdo, and in spite of all this, chic. In fact, as we shook hands in a most businesslike manner, I had the feeling that something warm might well spring up between us. Something like a warm mutual dislike, maybe. But something.
Most men simply cannot be told anything in confidence. They gossip.
That's a switch.
I don't appreciate your humor, Mr. Spade.
I accept your apology.
I will tolerate you because of your reputation.
All right.
I'm going to give you a very difficult job to do.
Miss Cameron.
What is it, Major?
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but Courtney Pierce is on the phone.
Mr. Spade, this is Major Briggs, our chief accountant.
We've already met.
Mr. Spade. Now, Adela, Pierce wants us to unload his short-term governments and buy American cattle. He's dividend crazy. AMCAT's declaring one in January, and he wants it.
Well, let him do it.
Well, I just want to protect your interests. You know what will happen to AMCAT after February. They'll drop 10 points, and he'll blame us. I went through this with your father when you and Greg were...
That's right, Major. Well, tell him we advise against it. But if he persists, ask him for a release in writing.
That's what I thought you'd do. That's the way your father would have handled it. I just want to protect your interests, my dear, that's all.
I know, Major, I know.
Just want to protect your interests.
Well, don't worry about us. You know, we're not children anymore.
All right, my dear.
Where were we?
Oh, you were giving me a difficult job.
Oh, yes. Here is the business address of Mr. I.J. Barco. He's a wealthy manufacturer, a client of ours. I want you to find out everything about him, especially anything unsavory.
Sorry, I don't do divorce or blackmail cases.
Mr. Spade, this is not a divorce investigation.
All right, what is it then?
Why do we want a client shadowed, I
Hmm.
believe is the expression?
That's it?
Because we believe he is investing money through us for some racketeers. If that were true, we would, of course, have to drop him. But we don't want to lose his business just on suspicion.
I see.
Find out anything you can about him. I'll give you $50 a day in expenses, 1 week guarantee. Will you consider the job?
I have considered and taken the job. By the time I'd reached the door, she had already forgotten me and was hard at work on some papers. Outside, I planned to dally a few moments in idle chit-chat with Celeste. But before I had the chance, I was accosted by a husky young chap whom I'm afraid was a Princeton man.
What were you talking about in there, Spade?
Oh, you have the advantage, sir. Who are you?
Gregory Cameron. Now, come on. What was Adela telling you?
Well, if you step to one side, you can walk around me and ask her.
Look, don't pull that cagey private detective routine on me. I pack a little weight myself.
Well, pack it somewhere else, Sonny.
I asked you a question. I expect an answer.
There's your answer. Any more questions? He didn't feel much like talking then, and I was so irritated I walked out without saying goodbye to Celeste. When I reached the street, the white-haired old gentleman, Major Briggs, hurried out behind me.
Mr. Spade, please don't think too badly of that boy. I've known him from the cradle. He's in a difficult emotional state at the moment.
Sure. As far as I'm concerned, Major, it never happened.
You're a kind man, Mr. Spade. I could tell that when I first saw you. You're just the sort of man Miss Cameron needs.
Well, I hadn't looked at it that way.
If you require anything, don't hesitate to ask me. I've been with this company 40 years before those two children in there were born, and I know how difficult life can be at times. I just want things to go well for them.
I'll do my little part, Major.
Bless you, son. Bless you.
I started to work. The card Adela Cameron had given me revealed that my quarry, Mr. I.J. Barco, was of all things a manufacturer of dog beds. I sat down on a hydrant to think this over and then followed the scent of horse meat on over to his factory on South Dolores. It was built in the shape of a large doghouse, and outside stood a billboard with the message, "A survey of independent dog tracks, kennels, and canine corps proves that dogs choose Barco beds 2-1. I had to get a look at Barco himself, and so ruffling up the hair on the back of my neck, I trotted into the building, sniffing and wagging my tail in a very friendly manner. It was very easy to see Mr. Barco after I lied a little about my connections.
What was that name again?
Senor Don Jose Martinez Sada Morales, but you may call me Sam.
And you represent a group of retail outlets in South America.
Oh, I do indeed. We have our eye on your dog beds, Mr. Barco.
Well, now, let's take a look at our catalog here. Now, say you had a Great Dane. You'd want something regal like this Louis XIV. Ever see a more beautiful bed?
Well, not lately, but Mr. Barco...
Down, boy, down. Now, here's a number that's very big this season with English Bulldogs, a Sheraton, natural wood finish. Lovely, huh?
Arriba.
And, of course, if it's an Irish Terrier, here's a purely gag present for his sense of humor. A Murphy bed. Get it, Sam? Irish Terrier?
See.
Well, of course, we wouldn't ask a dog to sleep in a Murphy
Oh,
bed.
Mr. Barco, I'm afraid I don't see anything here I like.
What's this? Do I understand you, sir? You are refusing this small speck of comfort to the one unselfish friend that man can have in this selfish world?
Well, I'm not refusing anything. I just don't
The
happen
unselfish friend who, if fortune drives you forth an outcast into the world homeless, will ask no higher privilege than to be at your side to guard against danger.
But Mr. Barco...
Faithful unto death, there by your graveside will be found the noble dog,
My
his
graveside?
head between his paws, his eyes sad but watchful, faithful...
We shook paws, and I felt his nose to be sure it was cold. It was, and I left. I rented a car and took up a station outside the Barco factory. About 4 o'clock, he hurried out, jumped into a long, low vehicle shaped like a dachshund, and mushed off. I followed. An hour later, I was phoning my first report to Adela Cameron's secretary, Celeste.
You went to the city hall. What did you do there, Mr. Spade?
License bureau. Marriage, not dog.
Really? Where'd he go then?
Grocery store, where he bought 1 bottle of olives, 1 bottle of vermouth, and 1 bottle gin. I wonder what he's going to make. What recipe is that? Well, now he's in an apartment house on Post Street, just across from the drugstore I'm in, and judging from the groceries, intends to stay a while. He has laid in provision.
Uh-huh. Well, I guess that's all we wanted to know.
What?
Miss Cameron just told me to call you off the case. You'll still get your guarantee, though. Major Briggs will send you a check.
Well, that doesn't make sense.
Sam orders his orders.
All right. What about tonight?
I'm afraid not. Some other time.
You mean it's all over? The half-daring, half-shy kisses on the Oakland ferry? The warm, passionate spring nights at Fisherman's Wharf eating abalone? Hello? Well. Puzzled, as who wouldn't be, I walked slowly back to my car. But before I had a chance to get in, I saw I.J. Barco hurry out of his apartment house. But he didn't enter his car. He came right for me.
Spade! Just a minute, Spade.
So sorry, my name is Don Jose Martinez Sada Morales yet.
Don't kid me, Spade. I'm not as stupid as I acted today.
Huh.
Look, I know why Adela Cameron is following me, and you don't. And you'll never find out, any more than the other 4 detectives did.
I was the 5th choice? Well, I shall speak with my agent about this.
I'm going to tell her in person that this foolishness has to stop. If it doesn't, she'll live to regret it. One more thing. I presume you're going to follow me. Well, I'm turning right on Market and heading out to 1217 Ridgewood Place. You shouldn't have any trouble.
And with that, he spun on one heel and trotted to his car. He took off, but when I went to my car, it wouldn't turn over. And when I lifted the hood, I found out why. All my spark plugs were gone. I picked up a new set at a service station, looked up Adela Cameron's address in the phone book. It was 1217 Ridgewood Place. And a good half hour later, I got there. Barco's car was out in front. No one answered the door, but it was open. Adela Cameron was a crumpled heap on the living room sofa.
Oh, Sam. Sam, help me, please.
All right, Miss Cameron. Let me look at you. You hurt?
No, I'm all right. It's him.
Where?
The bar.
I hurried into the bar and was met with a strong odor of scotch. A bottle of it had been broken, and holding the neck of the bottle in one hand was I.J. Barco. He was on the floor, his hand slowly opened. The glass rolled out, and he died.
You are listening to the weekly adventure of radio's most famous detective, Sam Spade. Act 2 of tonight's Sam Spade in just a moment. Meanwhile, here's news of other goings-on on NBC. There's no doubt about it, it's the big show. Not just any big show, but the big show. Brought to you every Sunday night over most of these NBC stations. An hour and a half of the very best in comedy, music, and drama. Your stars this Sunday on the big show include Fred Allen, Margaret Truman, Douglas Fairbanks, Danny Thomas, Mindy Carson, and many more. All presided over by the glamorous Tallulah. No wonder it's the big show. Saturday night on NBC means mystery with the man called X, a man without a name who travels the world over on missions of intrigue and peril. Herbert Marshall stars as the man called X tomorrow and every Saturday evening on NBC. And now back to the Dog Bed Caper, tonight's adventure with Sam Spade.
It took 3 bullets in the chest to finish off I.J. Barco. He'd apparently been standing there pouring a drink. Barco broke the bottle as he fell. I couldn't find any other signs of violence or any gun, so I went back to Adela Cameron. She was beginning to calm down.
I don't know who did it. I just don't know.
Well, it couldn't have happened more than a minute ago, and you were in the house, weren't you?
No, after I left my office, I stopped in the store for some things, then came home. When I was driving down Ridgewood, I heard some sound.
And you thought they were a car backfiring.
How did you know?
I've heard this script before.
Don't you dare accuse me of killing that man.
It's not what I think that counts, but what the police accuse you of.
Sam, I heard those sounds. I came in the house when I went into the bar.
You didn't notice Barco's car out in front?
Oh, I suppose I did. I don't know. I don't remember.
Uh-huh.
Who are you calling?
Homicide.
Sam, wait a minute. Just a minute, please.
Wait for what?
I want to tell you some things.
All right. Go on. I kind of get the feeling I was hired to put the finger on the dog's best friend.
That's not the way it was. The last thing in the world I wanted was for him to be killed. Oh, murdered, I mean.
All right, what did you want?
I'll tell you the truth. Why I really had you watching Barco.
I'd be curious.
We handled his investment account. My brother Gregory...
We ran into each other.
I heard. Well, Greg took $150,000 of Barco's money and invested it, without my knowledge, in a television company.
I hear that medium's making money.
But it turned out this company was just a front for some men who wanted to build a gambling syndicate up north.
You mean your brother didn't know that?
He knew, but there was supposed to be big money in it. He was going to give Barco a good profit and take the rest for himself.
And Barco found out and threatened suit or something.
He never would have known, but the deal fell through and the gambler said the money was gone. Then he asked about the investment. What could Gregory and I tell him?
What did you?
Unfortunately, the truth. We said we'd make up the money with interest, but he only gave us 90 days. We couldn't get it by then.
So you didn't shoot him, your brother did, eh?
No, Sam, no, he couldn't have. I know Greg. He'd have more sense.
In my brief meeting with him, I didn't think he had any sense. Just one more thing before I call the police.
Sam, don't call them. Help me get him out of here. Somewhere.
No dice.
Oh, Sam, don't let my whole life be
Stop
ruined.
it. You set me on Barco to find some blackmailing material, yes?
Yes.
And then why did you suddenly call me off the job tonight?
I didn't.
Your secretary said you did.
I didn't. I didn't tell her anything of the sort.
Can I have that phone now? So I called you, Dundee. Before you arrived, I looked through Barco's pockets for something to do and came up with a picture of him and a girl taken outside a marriage chapel in Las Vegas. The girl was Celeste, Cameron Incorporated's plushy secretary, several years younger and 2 shades less voluptuous. Her address, 627 Finley, was supplied by a now hysterical Adela Cameron. No one answered Celeste's door, but I heard a shower going inside, so I took the liberty of entering. Persona non grata.
Is there somebody out there?
There is.
Well, who is it?
Come out and see.
Oh.
No false moves now. Keep that towel right where it is. Am I doing here detective work? And I must say I've already found out a great deal.
Well, Sam, I'll admit I did express some interest in you, but if you recall, I told you not tonight.
It's my only night off.
Sam, please leave. I don't want any difficult scenes.
All right, we knock off the cute touches and get down to business. You were married to I.J. Barco, right or wrong?
Wrong.
Wrong, it's right. You were married in Las Vegas at the chapel of the Flamingo Hotel, the Towel.
I was only married one day. My parents had it annulled. I was underage.
Well, you don't have to worry about him anymore. He's dead.
No.
Shot 3 times at close range.
Oh, no.
In Adela Cameron's house.
What?
Not by you, of course. Although, on the other hand, as you would say, why not?
I didn't do it, Sam.
Suppose you spill.
He wanted me to marry him again.
Why?
Well,
I know all about the money the Camerons misused.
He found out Greg and I were in love.
I should have known.
He said he'd forget about the entire $150,000 if I'd marry him for 6 years.
$25,000 a year. That's a good price.
How can you talk like that?
Practice, I guess. So, Gregory had another good reason for killing him.
He didn't, Sam. I know he didn't.
Anything that would stand up in court?
I don't think so.
Suppose we say you called me off Barco's tail so Gregory could get at it.
I didn't. I called you off because I was supposed to meet I.J. at his apartment tonight and give him his answer. I couldn't do it with you there.
Flimsy, but it might hold.
It's the truth. I was going to see him, but I changed my mind.
Any particular reason?
Well, you saw him. Would he be the kind of man I'd marry?
Well, you did once. Well, it looks bad for Greg. Because someone at Cameron Incorporated knew Barco was going to be at Adela's house.
Sam, will you do me a favor?
Maybe.
Give me an hour. Then I'll go wherever you want. I'll tell you anything you want to know.
Why an hour?
Because if I'm going to live with myself, there's something I have to do.
Well?
Please, Sam. If you do, I'll give you some information you might want.
For example?
There was someone at Cameron Incorporated who knew that Barco was going to Adela's house.
She must have known I was going to wait outside and tail her, but she didn't, because without once looking over her shoulder, she emerged from her apartment house, slithered into her car, and led me directly down to the railroad station. She met a man in the waiting room, threw her arms around him, whispered something in his ear, and they hurried out to track 7. There was a transcontinental train getting up steam. She kissed him, and he climbed quickly up into a Pullman named Aurora Falls. And almost as quickly, I climbed in the other end. We met in the middle.
What are you doing here?
I came to take you off the train, Greg, before you made a big mistake and left town.
Now, look here,
Let's not
Spade.
go through the intercollegiate tough talk again. Are you coming off, or am I going to carry you off?
You're going to carry me off?
And I did. Celeste was gone, and he revived when he hit the cool air. I let him out of the station as unobtrusively as possible. Then we went down a side street to where my car was parked. That's where he began to show signs of life.
Spade, look. You're all wrong. Guy's got a right to leave town when he wants to. I'm going to sue you from here to the city hall and back.
Shut up and get in the car.
Celeste just told me about Barco. You don't think I did that, do you?
As I get it, you and Celeste were leaving town together, right?
Yeah, she told me to go on and she'd come later.
That was unwise of both of you. Come on, get in.
Spade, I didn't kill Barco.
Nobody said you did. Now, if you'll kindly get in the car and give me an address I want, and you know, we'll go see who did kill I.J. Barco. He gave me the address I wanted and said I was crazy. I told him why I wasn't, and he began to see the reason of it. Never have I gone to pick up a murderer with more distaste. When we knocked at the door, I had a gun in my hand. but it wasn't necessary.
Oh, come in, Mr. Spade. I knew you'd be along sooner or later.
I don't like what I have to do, Major.
Major, it can't be true. It just can't be.
Come in, Gregory, my boy. Come in. A little Madeira first before we start to talk.
Madeira? How can you talk about wine when a man's accusing you of murder?
Oh, I don't think it's so unreasonable, Greg. After all, I did kill the unfortunate Mr. Barco, and this might be the last Madeira I shall ever have. Mr. Spade.
Thank you, sir.
Greg?
I don't want any wine. Spadey's out of his mind, and so are you.
I'm afraid not, Gregory.
Oh, that was a vintage 1900 Madeira you wasted, Greg. Twice as old as you.
Stop it.
I'm sorry about what happened, Greg. I would have spared you and your sister this unhappiness if I could have. But destiny was against us all.
You knew he was going to Miss Cameron's house, didn't you?
Yes. Just before I left for the bank with the weekly deposit, he called for Miss Cameron, and I took the call. I told him she was gone, and he said he was going to her house. It was to be an ultimatum. The money in 24 hours or exposure.
But you didn't have to...
Kill him? Certainly not. It was a crime of passion. I take the weekly deposit to the bank every Friday, and I always carry a gun. Silly me carrying a gun. Never had to use it, but the bonding company requires I carry it. Well, I went directly from the bank to Miss Cameron's house. I wanted to help her face Barco.
Was she there?
Oh, no, Mr. Spade. She'd apparently stopped downtown to do some shopping. So I faced Barco alone. I asked him point blank to give these young people more time, but he just laughed at me. He said the only time they'd get would be in jail, so...
It happened.
Well, I hadn't intended to, but I became angry. Suddenly found the gun in my hand, and the thought crossed my mind, my life is just about over, and yours, Greg, is just beginning. It was easier to pull the trigger than I would have realized.
Oh, Lord.
More Madeira, Mr. Spade?
Thank you, Major, but no.
Well, allow me to present the bottle to you as a gift. I'll get my hat and coat. Greg, my boy, I'm sorry.
You're sorry. Major, I wish I'd never been born.
Period. End of report.
Oh, Sam, I wish I hadn't either.
Hadn't what?
Been born. That poor, poor man.
Yes, our racket.
It is. And poor Gregory. He'll have to go to jail for something, too.
He will, Eth. He will. How about typing it up?
I hate to, but I guess it's my duty.
Three chimes mean good times on NBC. There's no cover charge at Duffy's Tavern. Just keep your dial on this NBC station this evening as Archie the manager, played by Ed Gardner, and his remarkable friends serve up another Blue Plate special of grilled English language, fresh laughs, and whimsy a la mode. Another Friday fun favorite is The Delightful Life of Riley, starring William Bendix as the beleaguered Chester A. Riley.
Now, let me see. Murder's all in place. Gunshots indicated. Dundee's grammar edited. My astuteness emphasized. Yeah, you've learned your job well, Effie.
Oh, I'm glad you're pleased, Sam.
Wait a minute. What's this? P.S. Dundee. Hands off Celeste Roberts. She's mine. Effie, what's the meaning of that?
Well, you are going back to see her, aren't you? After the way she threw herself at you? No?
Do you think she's my type of woman?
Oh, Sam, I think every woman's your type. Every woman but me.
Now, Effie, come here. Would I have you working in this office if you weren't my type?
I guess not.
Well, then let that thought be your comfort. The world can have all the Celeste Roberts it wants, as far as... Oh, I can't go through with it.
You see, Sam, you can have her if you want to. But in the end, I know you'll come back to me.
I never doubted it once.
Oh, Sam, you don't know how much you mean to me.
Yes, I do, Effie. 3 weeks back salary.
Oh, you. Good night, Sam.
Good night, sweetheart. The Adventures of Sam Spade are produced, edited, and directed by William Spear. Sam Spade was played by Stephen Dunn. Lorene Tuttle is Effie. Script for tonight's adventure by John Michael Hayes and Dick Powell. Musical scoring by Lud Gluskin, conducted by Robert Armbruster. Join us again next week, same time, for another adventure with Sam Spade. Hear the magnificent Montague, then visit Duffy's Tavern on NBC.
All right, that was The Adventures of Sam Spade with Steve Dunn as Sam Spade. And McLean, I think it's your turn here.
I suppose it is, Jake. I came prepared with, I hate to be on the nose here. Another show that's just kind of synonymous with the genre of private detectives here is The Adventures of Philip Marlowe. Philip Marlowe is interesting because it's one of those rare radio shows that didn't have a sponsor for most of its history.
Sustaining, they call that.
That's sustaining. But I think it's also one of the better private detective shows. Like with Sam Spade, there's a reason why it's the first one everyone thinks of. Most of the show starred Gerald Moore as Philip Marlowe, and I think because the show started with a few other actors. Van Heflin played Philip Marlowe in some of the first couple episodes, and then in one episode, William Conrad of Gunsmoke fame played him. But I can't really think of anyone else besides Gerald Moore as in the role of Philip Marlowe. Once I hear him there, it's just he fits it so well. But yeah, this is the episode from October 10th, 1948, just the second year of the show's history. The Adventures of Philip Marlowe, The Panama Hat.
Sounded good, real good. A weekend at Malibu, expenses paid with a cash bonus thrown in. But that was before I knew about the henchman, the redhead, and the corpse. These three and a white Panama hat ruined it all for me.
From the pen of Raymond Chandler, outstanding author of crime fiction, comes his most famous character as CBS presents The Adventures of Philip Marlowe. And now, with Gerald Moore starred as Philip Marlowe, we bring you tonight's unusual story, The Panama Hat.
I was sitting in my office bombing the ashtray on my desk with paper clips, wondering what kind of a job a private detective gets when clients stop calling completely. I was seesawing between the picture of me as a well-starched huckster and the more comfortable portrait of Marlowe, author in English tweeds, man of distinction. And the telephone brought me to a rude awakening. Marlowe speaking.
My name is Isabel Gordon, Mr. Marlowe. I must see you at once. My husband Bruce is in terrible danger. Could you possibly meet me in an hour at the Pelican Inn? It's a small roadside place on the way to Malibu. I'll explain everything then.
Pelican Inn, 1 hour, Mrs. Gordon. The Pelican Inn was strictly a liquor license with chairs, and a bored piano player in one corner grinding away. The place was empty, and I was about to order a drink when the front door opened and a woman entered. She was tall and thin and right out of Harper's Bazaar, from double ankle-strap shoes to close-cropped hair. One look at her fear-crowded eyes, and I knew it was Isabel Gordon. I got up and introduced myself. Then we went to a table, and she started to talk.
For 2 weeks now, Mr. Marlowe, my husband Bruce has been receiving unsigned, threatening letters. I'm almost sick with worry. I don't know what to do.
Now, wait a minute, Mrs. Gordon. The first thing to do is to get hold of yourself. And tell me the whole thing right from the beginning.
Yes, all right. Well, first of all, Bruce and I have only been married a little more than a year. We're living with my uncle, Avery Fairchild, on an estate out beyond Malibu.
I see. What does your husband do for a living, Mrs. Gordon?
Why, He's a photographer.
Movie or commercial?
Well, at present, it's neither. You see, Bruce has been terribly unsettled since the war. Lost, sort of, and then recently he got interested in photography, and it's been a great help to him.
But he doesn't exactly work at it, huh?
Well, he's converted one of the rooms in the guest cottage into a studio, and he spends almost all of his time there experimenting with portrait work. But he doesn't actually have a job, if that's what you mean.
How does that appeal to your Uncle Avery?
Oh, I'll be honest with you, Mr. Marlowe. My uncle thinks the sun rises and sets on me, but with Bruce...
It's total eclipse, is that it?
I'm afraid so. All his life, Uncle Avery has been concerned only with dollars and cents. He simply doesn't understand or sympathize with an artist's viewpoint.
Uh-huh. Now, what about these unsigned letters?
Well, Bruce has been getting them for the past 2 weeks. They're always made up of words cut from newspapers and pasted on ordinary paper.
That's a cheap stunt. What do they say?
Each one threatens my husband's life. Yet both he and Uncle Avery consider them nothing more than the work of some harmless crank, in spite of the fact that for the last several days I've seen a strange man lurking around our place every night.
Can you describe him?
No, except well, he's about your height and build.
Is that all?
Yes. No, Wait a minute. There is something else. Each time I saw him, Mr. Marlowe, he was wearing a white Panama.
Well, that's not much to go on. Tell me, why haven't you called the police?
Uncle Avery wouldn't hear of it. He hates publicity, dreads it. That's why I suggested contacting you, a private detective.
That's sort of a bodyguard for Bruce, huh?
Yes. However, Mr. Marlowe, Bruce is somewhat temperamental, and I know he'd rebel at the thought of being watched over, so I'd rather you posed as a house guest, an old college chum of mine, perhaps.
My fee is $25 a day plus expenses, Mrs. Gordon.
Oh, any price is all right, Mr. Marlowe. Let's see, it's a little after 7 now. Can you be at our place at Malibu at 9?
I think so. But as a fellow alumnus, Isabel, one last question. Where'd you go to college?
Southern California. Why?
Well, I was afraid you might say Vassar. After Isabel left, I remembered that I was already on my expense account. So I had a tasteless, cold, hot blue plate special and a burned cup of coffee. Then I stepped out of the Pelican Inn and headed across the paved parking lot to my car. It was already dark, and I was admiring the full moon and the beautiful wash it made over the ocean when it happened.
Hey, mister!
What the...
You all right, mister?
Yeah, I think so. Thanks to your sounding off.
That nut was aiming right for you.
Yeah, looks that way. Did you happen to get his number?
No.
What about his face? Can you describe him?
No, matter of fact, I only noticed one thing.
What was that?
The hat he was wearing. It was a white Panama.
I tried to be broad-minded, but there was no other way to look at it. The gentleman in the white Panama hat definitely meant business. I returned to my apartment in Hollywood, where I shaved, showered, and packed. And then I headed for Malibu. At 9:15, I was inside the grounds of the Fairchild estate. Another mile, and I was at the front door. When I entered, Isabel greeted me like I was a keg of brandy around a St. Bernard's neck. Then we waded through an inch-thick carpet to the library where Uncle Avery, fat, bald, and looking like he'd just bitten into an underripe persimmon, was waiting. I wasn't asked to sit down, and I wasn't offered a cigar. Avery Fairchild was not one to waste time.
I'm a very rich man, Mr. Marlowe. As such, I'm the target for all kinds of fortune hunters, confidence men, and cranks. In my lifetime, I've been threatened and pestered by a score of crackpots, each one slightly more psychopathic than the last. It's never bothered me, and it never will. However, in this case, the approach is a bit different.
Meaning you think somebody's trying to get at you through your nephew, huh?
Never refer to him as my nephew. My niece's husband, if you please. And don't forget it.
Uncle Avery.
Isabel, my feelings about your husband are no secret.
You're being unfair, Uncle Avery. Just because Bruce is an artist and he...
Artist, is he? Why, Isabel, that man's no more an artist than I am a horse jockey.
Good evening, everybody.
Hello, Bruce.
Hello, darling. You were saying something, Uncle Avery?
Bruce, I want you to meet Philip Marlowe. We were great friends at school, and when I heard he was in town for a while, I insisted that he spend a weekend with us.
How do you do, Mr. Gordon?
It's a pleasure to have you with us, Mr. Marlowe. You're very welcome.
I do the welcoming around here, Bruce.
Mr. Marlowe's had a long trip, and I'm certain he'd like to turn in early. Bruce, darling, he's going to stay in the guest cottage, the room next to your studio. Will you show him there, please?
Oh, I'll be glad to. By the way, Isabella, I'm going to work late, so I'll say good night to you now.
Good night, dearest.
Good night, sweet.
Please be careful.
Yes, Bruce, by all means, be careful. Remember, the true artist belongs to posterity. Or something.
guest cottage was only a landscaped hop, skip, and a jump from the museum that Uncle Avery called home. And as Bruce and I strolled along a flagstone path, I feigned a deep interest in photography. That was all my host needed. He struck at the bait like a shark with malnutrition.
Well, Mr. Marlowe, it didn't even occur to me that photography might be one of your hobbies. Isabel never said a word.
Well, good for Isabel. I'm strictly a dabbler. And tell me, Mr. Gordon, how long have you been at this?
Portrait work? Oh, about 6 months. You see, I divide my time between my studio here and a school I attend in Hollywood. That way I capture both the theory and practical experience at the same time.
Oh.
Well, here we are. Would you like to see the studio?
Yes, I would.
Here, let me get the lights.
Wow. This is all right, huh? Enlarger, 2 cameras, dark room. Are these your pictures?
Yes. What do you think of them?
I don't know exactly. They're certainly different, huh?
They are unusual, aren't they?
Yeah.
You see, Marlowe, each picture is actually made up of 2 separate studies which are superimposed. I call it interpretive photography.
Uh-huh. Now, this one. A splash of light and a bent pipe cleaner?
The sun and the plant shoot. It's called metamorphosis.
Oh. Well, what about that one there in the corner? Girl's face and clouds, maybe. Huh?
Mr. Marlowe, you'll excuse me, but that picture isn't ready for display yet.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to pry. I thought it was just another interpretive photograph.
Well, it's not. That is, it isn't finished yet. Now, Mr. Marlowe, I'm afraid I've forgotten what my wife said about your long trip. Shall I show you to your room?
Yes, please do, Mr. Gordon. My room on the other side of the guest cottage was wider than Hollywood Boulevard. After Bruce apologized for his display of temperament and bid me a polite good night, I climbed into the silk pajamas that were laid out for me, stretched out on the bed, and tried to figure who belonged to the white Panama hat. But an hour passed, and I wasn't getting any sensible answers. So I switched out the light, put my gun on the table next to me, and snuggled into what felt like 1.5 miles of mattress. I was almost asleep, and the clatter of a shovel falling on the walk outside brought me straight up in bed. I grabbed my gun and made for the door. But the second I threw it open, I knew that I'd made a mistake. Whoever kicked over that shovel had hurt me and met me with a large fist that came straight at my face. Oh! As I came back into the world, I was embarrassed to find myself alone and flat on my back. When I started to get up, I felt like the L.A. Dons, water boy and all, had run over my face. My gun was a few feet away, and when I went to pick it up, I stopped short. It was a souvenir from the man with the great big fist. A gold cigarette lighter. It was engraved to Skipper on his birthday. Putting it in my pocket, I picked up my gun and made for Bruce's studio. He wasn't there. I threw on some clothes and went back to the house and found Isabel in the living room. I was about to give her a biased account of the shortest fight on record when I noticed Uncle Avery quietly entering the house from a side door that led to the garden.
What's the matter, Phil?
Bruce isn't in his studio anymore.
What?
Now, Isabel, there's no reason for alarm. Why, Bruce often goes off into the night like this. Called it a search for beauty or some such rot.
And what was it you were after just now outside, Mr. Fairchild?
I was looking for my niece, Marlowe. Isabel, your cousin John telephoned to say he wouldn't be down this weekend.
Oh.
I didn't know there were to be other guests.
Oh, just my cousin, John Martin, Phil. Not really a guest. He comes down often.
Too often to suit me.
Oh, Uncle Avery, please. You know that I'm fond of him.
Yes, but I don't know why. He's a chronic gambler and of no use to anyone. Living at the Wilshire Gardens when he can't afford it. Driving expensive cars.
Oh, you're too hard on him. Skipper is
Skipper?
a bad... Yes. Do you know him?
No. No, I don't.
Well, you're not missing anything, believe me.
Oh, I do believe you, Mr. Fairchild. I believe your every word.
What?
Good night, all. I left the house and headed straight for my car with the Wilshire Gardens in Hollywood in mind. It was just a chance that John Skipper Martin might own a white Panama hat. When I got to the prodigal cousin's bungalow, it was dark inside. So I pressed one hand close to my gun and the other against the doorbell. But there was no answer. A side window was open, and I started toward it when a nasty voice greeted me from the shadow of a palm tree.
Good evening. Lovely night, isn't it?
I hadn't noticed. I've been busy.
I know. We've been waiting for you for a long time.
We?
Uh-huh. Me and my nice shiny revolver here. 38.
Oh, I see. Well, you make a handsome couple, and I hope you're both very happy together now. What do you want?
I don't want anything. I'm here to give you something. Advice.
Look, brother, I've already told you I'm busy, so if this is a heist, let's get it over with, fast.
You know, I think you're confused. I'm holding the gun, Mr. Martin.
Martin?
John Skipper Martin. Surprised that I know your name?
Why, yes. Yes, I am. I don't recall having had the pleasure.
You haven't. People never forget me, Mr. Martin. My tag is Brock. Does that mean anything?
No, what do you do? Sing, dance, tell jokes?
Yeah, that's it. The last one. I tell jokes.
I can't wait.
You won't have to, Mr. Martin. I'm going to tell you one right now. Goes like this. Once upon a time, a young punk borrowed $10,000 from a generous gambler on his promise to pay the money back within a week. But the young punk never came across. So the gambler told a nice fellow named Brock to call on the young punk and tell him that he had 48 hours in which to get the money together. And that if he didn't, he'd never see the 49th hour. What's the matter, Mr. Martin? Don't you like jokes?
Brock grinned, shoved his 38 into his shoulder holster, and walked away. As soon as he rounded the corner, I went to the open window and climbed in. I rummaged through 2 closets looking for a white Panama you-know-what. I was about to search a third when I heard something that brought me to a dead stop. There was a key in the front door lock. I closed my right hand over the gun in my pocket, moved flush against the side wall, and waited. But the moment the door swung open, the telephone rang. And the hulk of a man that entered went straight for it. He was wearing a gray fedora.
Hello? Oh, hello, Isabel. What? Bruce? Are you sure? But that's impossible. I mean, things like that just don't... Excuse me, Isabel. I think I have a visitor. I'll call you back.
Reach, Mr. Martin.
Who are you?
My name is Brock. You owe a client of mine $10,000. He wants his money in 48 hours.
I'll get it. I swear I will. I'll have it right here, on time, all of it.
How are you going to do that, Mr. Martin?
I've got a way. Someone's going to give it to me tonight.
Why?
Why? Because it's the healthy thing to do. That's why. That's all you wanted to know, isn't it?
That's all. Good night, Mr. Martin.
Hello?
This is Marlowe, Isabel. I'm calling from a drugstore in Hollywood. Has Bruce returned yet?
No, and he won't. He's been kidnapped.
What's that?
And whoever did it wants $50,000 before morning, or we'll never see Bruce alive again.
As I walked to my car opposite the Wilshire Gardens, I felt like my brain had spent the night in a cement mixer. I was about to head back for Malibu when I suddenly saw Skipper Martin dash out of his bungalow and pile into a long, glossy convertible. I followed him out to the Pacific Palisades, where he made a call at a little house which sat on a bluff overlooking the sea. Once he was inside, I moved up quietly and saw that the name on the mailbox was Miss Carla Winters. I crawled up to a lace-curtain window where I could see what was going on. One look at Miss Winters made the damage I was doing to my tweeds worthwhile. She was strictly Dragon Lady, with flaming red hair and a waist you could span with 2 hands, if you were lucky enough to get that close. And the rest of the measurements fit just perfect.
Why, you sniveling coward, you wouldn't dare open your mouth about us.
Wouldn't I? Listen, Carla, I've got myself Skipper Martin to look after. First, last, and always. You remember that.
Why should I? You've always been cheap talk and no more. Look at you now. You're in trouble, so what do? You holler blackmail. Go on, get out of here. Get out of here before I kill you.
When Skipper slammed the front door, stomped to his car, and roared off, I couldn't figure any reason, legitimate reason, that is, for calling on Carla Winters. So I returned to the Fairchild place. Isabel was somewhere between hysteria and collapse over the fact that she and Bruce had less than $2,000 in their own name. Uncle Avery, of course, was more than reluctant to pay the ransom demanded for the return of a man he'd rather not have returned. But his niece won out.
All right, Isabel, I'll give you the money. But understand, I'm doing this for you, not for that no
yes,
good...
Uncle Avery, I understand, but can you get that much cash at this hour? The banks
Who
are...
said anything about banks? You know I don't like them. Money will be in your hands in 30 minutes. In the meantime, tell Mr. Marlowe here what arrangements you've made with your husband's abductors.
1 minute, Mr. Fairchild. What about the police?
The police have already been notified, Mr. Marlowe. They've agreed not to interfere until tomorrow morning. By that time, I suppose we'll have Bruce return to us.
To us, Uncle Avery?
That's a mere slip of the tongue, Isabel. I'm only paying for his return. You take over from there. I don't want him.
A half hour later, Avery Fairchild handed me a bundle of bills which added up to $50,000 cash. The bills seemed slightly dirty. The old geezer must have had them buried someplace. For a moment, I couldn't help thinking, boy, to get at this place with a shovel sometime. But then I got back to the more pressing matters at hand. I wrapped up the money in a shoebox and I drove north along the Pacific Coast Highway. I covered the 60 miles to the rendezvous, which was a junkyard near Ventura, in about as many minutes. Then, according to instructions, I slowed down to 10 miles an hour. I blinked my lights twice, tossed out the shoebox. I was just about to resume my speed when the headlights of an approaching car fell on a man as he darted back into the junkyard. And I saw what I'd been expecting all the time. A white Panama hat. But I was still playing by the rules. So there was only one thing I could do about it. I slammed my foot down on the accelerator and kept it there until I reached the nearest telephone, where I telephoned Skipper Martin at the Wilshire Gardens. It was just possible that he owned 2 hats. But that little balloon exploded in a hurry.
Hello?
Mr. Martin?
Yes. Who is this?
This is Brock, remember me?
Oh, yes, of course. I've been hoping you'd call.
You mean you got the money right now?
Well, no, not this minute, but I will have it in a couple of hours.
You're sure, Mr. Martin?
I'm positive, Brock.
Now only one thing figured. The man in the Panama hat worked for Skipper Martin. It had to be. An hour later, I pulled in at the Fairchild estate. And the moment I put my AA over the threshold, I knew that the kidnapper, too, had kept his part of the bargain. Bruce Gordon was back, safe and sound.
It happened shortly after you retired, Mr. Marlowe. I was working in my studio when a man wearing
a white Panama hat.
Yes. But how did you know that, Mr. Marlowe?
They're very popular this season, Mr. Gordon.
Darling, Mr. Marlowe was a private detective.
Huh?
But I'll tell you all about that later. Go on with your story.
Well, this man was wearing a handkerchief over his face, and he forced me to go along with him at gunpoint. Took me to a car parked in the service driveway and told me to turn around. And I was hit from behind and went out cold.
Oh, darling, how terrible.
It wasn't pleasant to you. When I came to, I was bound hand and foot, blindfolded and gagged. I had no idea where I was.
Oh, but didn't you see anybody before you were released?
No, Uncle Avery. Before they let me go, they hit me again. When I came to that time, I was lying on the road out near Ventura, untied. That's about it.
I suppose you've told the story to the police already, huh?
No, he hasn't, Mr. Marlowe, and what's more, he isn't going to. I'm sorry, but I was forced to lie to you earlier this evening. The police mean reporters, and they mean publicity. And I hate publicity. I'm sure you see my point.
I wouldn't make book on that, Mr. Fairchild. Secrets like this only encourage kidnappers.
Well, since we no longer see eye to eye, Mr. Marlowe, I'd suggest that we consider your services at an end. I'll have my check at your office in the morning. Good night, sir.
Avery Fairchild wasn't the kind of a man you argued with. I threw my coat over my arm, tipped my hat to Isabel, and stepped outside. I hadn't once mentioned Skipper Martin to the family. That might have been a mistake, but I still wanted to look around before I yelled copper. As I walked past the guest cottage, I decided to go in and check Bruce's studio. Maybe the man in the white PH had left a few odd footprints on the ceiling. I tossed my coat in a corner chair and started through the clutter. 10 minutes later, I'd found nothing. I was about to leave when I suddenly remembered the picture of a girl in some clouds that Bruce had been so careful to keep out of sight. It hadn't been moved. And when I brought it into the light, I didn't have to look twice. It was the portrait of Carla Winters, The red-headed dragon lady that Skipper Martin had visited. Now things began to add up. At the chauffeur's quarters, there was an outside telephone, and I put through a hurry call to Lieutenant Ibarra at Homicide in L.A. The best I could get was one Sergeant Neely.
I'm sorry, Mr. Marlowe, but the lieutenant's out on a call right now. There's some kind of a row uptown.
Well, do you know where he is? The address, I mean.
Oh, yeah, sure. It's one of those bungalows at the Wilshire Gardens.
The Wilshire Gardens?
That's right. What's so special about that?
Maybe nothing. I'll know in a minute. Thanks, Neely.
Hello?
This is Marlowe, Ibarra. What brings you to Skipper Martin's at this late hour?
Well, it seems as though some person or persons unknown fired a gun several times a little more than an hour ago. 4 shots, to be exact.
Well, you think Skipper Martin fired him?
No, Marlowe, I'm sure Martin didn't fire them. You see, he stopped them, personally.
Before I hung up, I gave Ibarra a quick rundown on the whole story. After making me feel like a schoolboy for keeping him in the dark so long, he told me to sit on the Fairchild's front steps until he got there. Well, it gave me a half hour to kill, most of which I spent walking around aimlessly, trying to get something close to 4 out of 2 and 2. But I couldn't. Finally, I heard Ibarra siren up to the front door. I was about to head for him when the chill in the morning air reminded me that my topcoat was still in Bruce's studio. I went back and got it. When I turned for the door again, I noticed a little slip of paper that had been under the coat fall to the floor. I picked it up. I must have held it for a full minute before I realized what it meant. Just a small slip of paper, and yet it made everything, the kidnapping, Carla, the murder, fall right into place. When I entered the living room at the house, one glance at Isabel and Bruce told me that she'd already knew about Skipper's death. Only Uncle Avery, who was not one to shed crocodile tears, hadn't changed. Ibarra, of course, was unhappy.
Marlowe, we can't run any kind of a police department when every private detective acts like he's the commissioner himself. Why didn't you call me when this business first began to smell? You know better.
I'm sorry, Ibarra, and I hate to sound immodest, but I happen to be one of the 2 men in this room who can name Bruce Gordon's kidnapper and Skipper Martin's killer.
Do you know what you're saying, Marlowe?
I think so. The man in the white Panama hat who kidnapped Bruce Gordon, Lieutenant, is Bruce Gordon himself. In other words, Bruce Gordon kidnapped Bruce Gordon.
No! What? You're out of your mind, Marlowe.
Am I? Would you still say that, Gordon, if we paid a call to Carla Winters and asked her to hand over the $50,000 of so-called ransom money she's holding for you, too? Or would you prefer...
Stop, Gordon, stop.
The window, Ibarra!
Then, in other words, Marlowe, Bruce, who eventually planned to divorce Isabel and marry Carla Winters, wanted to have a little stake, like $50,000 around first.
That's right, Ibarra. But Skipper Martin knew about Bruce and Carla's plans to marry later, and he tried to blackmail them to pay off his gambling debts. That's why he came to Bruce's cottage on the sly. However, he got there just in time to see Bruce leave of his own free will, and therefore knew later that he couldn't have been kidnapped.
Which gave him 2 holds over Bruce.
That's right. But he made a mistake when he went to Carla's house and got too demanding, because she told Bruce about it, and before he released himself, he took care of Skipper, with 4 gunshots to be exact. Charming people, aren't they, Ibarra?
Lovely. Sometimes I think I should shoot higher and save the state a lot of money. And he almost got away with it. By the way, Marlowe, how do you know?
That Bruce was the man in the white Panama hat? Well, I was pretty certain, but I got my proof accidentally. Promise not to repeat this, Ibarra?
Yeah?
Well, I practically fell over a little slip of paper in his studio. It was a receipt from a department store, and it was made out to Bruce Gordon.
For 1 Panama hat?
Uh-huh. Nothing else but. When I finally got back to my place on Franklin Avenue, the sun was already up. And the people who work at nice, sane jobs were beginning to fill the streets. I'd been on the go for a steady 24 hours, so I could think of nothing but my bed. I was about to put my key in the lock when a next-door neighbor walked by, bid me a cheery good morning, and started down the corridor. Now, that alone wouldn't have disturbed my sleep, but why did he have to be wearing a white Panama hat?
The
Adventures of Philip Marlowe, created by Raymond Chandler, stars Gerald Moore and is produced and directed by Norman MacDonald. Featured in tonight's story were Jacqueline DeWitt as Isabel Gordon, Wilms Herbert as Uncle Avery Fairchild, Bill Lally as Bruce Gordon, Shep Menken as Skipper Martin, and Lou Krugman as Brock. Detective Lieutenant Ibarra is played by Jeff Corey. The special music was conceived and conducted by Richard Orant. Be sure to be with us again next week at this same time when Philip Marlowe says...
When her will was read, everybody figured she'd been crazy when she wrote it, and that included me. But I changed my mind after spending the night on an island with a pig, a cat, and an ape. Because in reality, they were people.
Tonight, Amos and Andy return to the CBS network. And along with all their friends, Kingfish, Lightnin, and Henry Van Porter, they're settling down for a permanent stay. Be listening for them later this evening over most of these same CBS stations. This is Roy Rowan speaking for CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System.
Alright, that was The Adventures of Philip Marlowe, and as for our last show today, I'm actually going to present 5 shows. Because you see...
Beg pardon?
Yes, because you see, yours truly, Johnny Dollar, had a notable series of episodes that ran for about a season of the show. For the first season that Bob Bailey played Johnny Dollar, the show aired as a 5-part-a-week show with 15-minute episodes every weekday. Those 15-minute episodes are highly regarded among radio collectors as being some of the best of old-time radio, and I kind of agree with them. This is the Open Town Matter, parts 1 through 5, from the week of July 23rd through the 27th of 1956, starring Bob Bailey.
From Hollywood, it's time now for...
Johnny Dollar.
Ralph Kearns, Johnny. Great Plains Guarantee.
Oh, hi, Ralph.
Johnny, you're 52 years old.
I am?
8 months ago, you married a lovely 27-year-old girl.
Now I'm with you.
A month later, you took out a $50,000 life insurance policy on a chief of police's salary.
I did, huh? And who did I name as beneficiary?
Your beautiful wife. Who else?
So?
So, 3 days ago, you were shot to death.
I had a feeling it wasn't going to last.
And 24 hours later, your wife files a claim on the policy.
My friends tried to warn me she was fast.
Well, there's the setup. What do you think?
The same thing you probably do.
In that case, you got just 56 minutes to catch the plane. The town is Greensport, Missouri. And watch yourself.
What do you mean?
From what I hear, Johnny, it's a wide open town.
Tonight, and every weekday night, Bob Bailey in the transcribed adventures of the man with the action-packed expense account, America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. From Special Investigator Johnny Dollar to the Home Office, Great Plains Guarantee Company, Hartford, Connecticut. The following is an accounting of expenditures during my investigation of the Open Town matter. Item 1, $84.60, transportation and incidentals, Hartford to Greensport, and taxi to the Townhouse Hotel. I was hoping for a chance to shower and change, look around long enough to get my bearings, and then edge into the case gradually. But it didn't work out that way. The case was already there and waiting for me, right in the lobby of the hotel. All dressed up in a shiny black suit, squeaky black shoes, and a neater-than-neat little black bow tie.
Oh, am I glad to see you, Mr. Dollar.
Are you?
Oh, indeedy, yes, I am. I just breathed a great big sigh. Relief, you know, when I heard you tell the clerk your name. That's how I know you're you, you know.
You mean there's been some doubt?
But of course you'll want to know I'm me, so I'll swear I had a card in one of these pockets.
Well, maybe you could just tell me who you are, Mr.
Plotzer, Averill P. Plotzer. I ought to have a card, though, to make it more official.
Oh, never mind. I believe you.
I must have given them all away. Don't worry, though. I'll get some more printed and see that you have one before you leave.
Well, thanks a lot, Mr. Potts. And now...
wait, Mr. Dollar. You want to talk to me, of course.
Will I?
Yes, I'm the agent here for the Great Plains Guarantee Company. I'm the one that sold that policy to the fellow that's dead.
Oh, so that's it.
Of course. He wasn't dead then, you understand.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it.
Feeling pretty lively, as a matter of fact, what with the new young wife and all that.
I imagine so, but now just...
Mr. Dollar, you've got to do something about that woman.
Oh?
Oh, she's driving me crazy. She wants her money, she says. $50,000. And she seems to think I'm carrying it around in my pocket.
She's, kind of anxious, huh?
I'll tell you how anxious. Chief Blake was shot about 2 in the morning, and at 3 that afternoon, Marty, that's Mrs. Blake, was down at my office after a claim form.
Yeah, I understand it was sent airmail special delivery.
She insisted on it. Made me take it straight to the post office as soon as she'd signed it.
Pretty cold-blooded about it, huh?
Well, I've heard Marty Blake called a lot of different things in this town at different times, but never cold-blooded. You follow me?
I think I'm ahead of you.
You'll know what I mean, all right, when you meet her.
I can hardly wait.
Man, oh man, wow.
Item 2, $1.15, taxi to the suburban home of Edgar Blake, former chief of police of Greensport, now deceased. On the strength of Potzer's description of the widow, I added a shave to the shower and change, and I hoped I looked a little fresher than I felt. The house was a rambling 2-story job, set back from the street. Well-kept shrubbery, nice lawn, quiet neighborhood, and plenty expensive. I wondered how Blake had been able to afford it. I was halfway up the walk when a man came out the front door. He wavered down the steps, then stopped and waited for me, rocking slightly on his heels.
A copper. I can tell him a block away. You're a copper, right?
Wrong.
Private eye, maybe?
No, insurance investigator.
Insurance. That's what I just asked her about. And you know what she did?
Threw you out, probably.
Right. Said I was drunk.
Oh, ridiculous.
That's exactly what I said. Ridiculous, I told her. Ridiculous. But you know something? She was right, I am.
No, I can hardly believe it.
Well, it's a fact, though. At least a little bit. My name's Crayley, Joe Crayley. I'm a reporter. Greensport Daily Herald.
Johnny Dollar. Hiya, Joe.
Insurance, huh? And he did have some, or you wouldn't have had any reason to be here. She was lying.
No comment.
Who's a beneficiary?
Still no comment.
It's her, of course. Little smarty Marty, his ever-loving little wife. How much is she going to make on the deal?
Sorry, Joe.
No comments. All right, let her lay. Okay.
Oh, wait a minute. Tell me something, Joe. Suppose I want a little action. Want to get into a poker game while I'm here. Find a crap table, maybe. Any idea where I could go?
Sure. Anyone a half a dozen different... Hey, how long you been in town, Johnny?
About an hour.
You wised up pretty fast, didn't you?
I didn't know it was a secret. The town is wide open, isn't it?
It is. But I wouldn't go around poking into things if I were you. A guy could get hurt, you see what I mean?
Maybe a guy did get hurt.
Blake, you mean? What makes you think so?
Well, if somebody wanted to keep the rackets going, the police chief would be a natural target, wouldn't he?
Not necessarily.
Meaning?
No comment.
What was Blake's salary, Joe?
$6,000 a year.
On $6,000, he was living in a house like this?
Wait till you see Marty. She's even more expensive.
So that's why Greensport is wide open. The police chief was in.
No comment.
Well, he's out now, that's for sure. Joe, I'll probably be talking to you later, so...
Yeah, do that. Just ask anybody. Joe Crayley, the alcoholic that works for the Herald. I'm always around somewhere.
Well, how do you do?
Mrs. Blake?
Yes, what can I do?
Johnny Dollar. I'm representing the insurance company.
Oh, come in, Mr. Dollar.
Thank you.
Come this way. I'm a little surprised, really. I hardly expected them to pay off so promptly.
Well, in that case, you won't be too disappointed.
Disappointed? What do you mean?
I mean, I didn't come here to pay you anything.
Then why did you come?
I'm a special investigator, Mrs. Blake.
What does that mean?
The company would like a little more information about your husband's death.
I told them all about it in the claim I sent to them.
I know, but sometimes it's necessary.
So that's the pitch. They're trying to squirm out of it.
Why do you say that?
Because they sent you here, that's why. And because they always do. I know how those companies operate.
Oh, you've had experience with them before.
No, I haven't. But I'm a real smart girl, Mr. Dollar. And I know a fast shuffle when I see it coming.
And a smart girl ought to know better than to yell before she's hurt.
Why else would they send out a special investigator?
I told you why. They want some more information.
What information? What is it they want to know?
The details, that's all. Exactly how your husband was killed.
I told them all that in the claim.
I know.
He
but
was
look,
shot to death with his own gun right here in his own house.
Do you mind showing me how it happened?
Oh, for the love of...
Now, look, there won't be any payment until I file my report, Mrs. Blake.
All right. You win. When you go after something, you really go after it, don't you?
That's what I get paid for.
Oh. And what about something you personally wanted?
Well, that would depend on how bad I wanted it.
I see. Would you like a drink?
No, thanks.
You won't mind if I have one.
Right ahead.
Looking at you.
Right. Now, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, I know. Stick to business. All right, come on. Happened over here by the stairway.
Mm-hmm. I see.
Right here. This is where he fell. This is where he died. His gun was lying on the floor beside him.
Middle of the night, wasn't it?
About 2 a.m, we'd been asleep.
Why did he come downstairs?
I heard a noise of some kind. It woke me up. I shook Ed and told him about it, and he came down to see what it was.
He was armed?
No. His gun was there on the hall table by the front door.
Is that where he usually left it?
Yes. Whenever he came home, he always took it off and put it there on the table.
Then anyone who knew him would probably know they could find it there.
Yes, I suppose so.
All right. So, what happened?
Well, like I said, Ed went on downstairs, and I walked out of the bedroom into the hall.
Were there any lights on?
Well, not down here. I turned on the hall light upstairs.
Did you hear your husband say anything?
No, all I heard was the shots, 4 or 5 of them. Then I heard someone run out the front door.
And what did you do?
I called out to Ed, but he didn't answer. Then I ran downstairs and found him lying here, dead.
Did you get a look at the prowler, or whoever it was?
No, it was too dark. And he ran out as soon as he fired the shots.
How did he get into the house?
The detective said he forced the lock on the front door. I guess that was the sound that woke me up.
And then he used a gun that was inside the house that he may or may not have known was inside the house.
That's what the police figure.
All right. What do you figure, Mrs. Blake?
The same thing, I guess. I don't know any more about it than they do.
Well, I thought you might have some theory of your own.
I'll string along with them.
Uh-huh. Just an accidental prowler who got panicky and snatched up a gun that happened to be lying around handy.
I guess that's about it.
Any idea at all who the prowler might have been?
Of course not.
Do you suppose it could have been somebody besides a prowler? Somebody who came here for the express purpose of murdering your husband?
Oh. Ed had a lot of enemies, of course, because of his job, but...
What about his friends, Mrs. Blake?
What do you mean?
Do you suppose one of his friends could have done it?
I don't know what you're talking about.
I've been admiring your watch. Real nice. Set in diamonds, emerald band. Must be worth around $2,000. Very nice.
Well, thank you.
And this house, the furniture, that car out there in the driveway. On a police chief's salary, Mrs. Blake.
I wouldn't know anything about Ed's financial affairs.
Who runs the rackets here in Greensport?
What rackets, Mr. Dollar?
Was your husband in on them?
Sure you won't have that drink?
All right, Mrs. Blake, play it your way.
I thought the insurance company was probably convinced that I was the one who killed him.
They're not convinced of anything yet.
But they think I did it, don't they?
No, but they think 24 hours is pretty fast for a grief-stricken widow to shoot a claim into the office.
I am not grief-stricken, Mr. Dollar.
So I've noticed.
Do I have to be? Is there some clause in the policy?
No, you don't have to be.
You think I did it, don't you?
I think there's a strong chance you did.
Then I think you need a little straightening out.
I'm listening.
Why shall I make it easy for you? Go see Dave Sherman. Talk to him.
Dave Sherman?
The city attorney. See what he says before you get all lathered up. See if he thinks I'm guilty.
All right, I will.
And then we'll talk. And if you're nice enough to me, maybe I'll even cooperate. You never know. Do you?
here's our star to tell you about tomorrow's episode of this week's story.
Before I do that, please let me say thanks to all of you who are so kind about writing and telling us how much you like Johnny Dollar. It's very gratifying encouragement to all of us who are involved in production of the program, and we appreciate your letters more than you know. As always, I'll try to answer you promptly, but sometimes the mail does pile up. In any event, thanks. Thanks very much for writing. Tomorrow, a smash in the teeth opens things up, and an airtight alibi gets air-conditioned with bullets. Join us, won't you? Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, starring Bob Bailey, is transcribed in Hollywood. Written by Les Crutchfield, it is produced and directed by Jack Johnstone. Be sure to join us tomorrow night, same time and station, for the next exciting episode of Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Roy Rowan speaking. From Hollywood, it's time now for...
Johnny Dollar.
This is Dave Sherman, Mr. Dollar, city attorney.
Oh, yes. I've been trying to reach you, Mr. Sherman.
Yes, so my office tells me. It's the Ed Blake case, I suppose.
That's right.
Well, I've already told my secretary to make all the records available.
It's not
to
the
you
records I'm mainly interested in, Mr. Sherman. I want to talk to you personally.
Oh, why?
Because I've been informed that you're able to furnish an alibi for my number one suspect.
Marty Blake, huh?
That's right.
Who informed you, Mr. Dollar?
Marty Blake.
Oh, the lovely widow herself.
Right.
Well, I guess we'd better have a talk.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yes, if you're dead set on lighting a fuse in this town, I may as well give you some matches. Come on over to the courthouse.
Tonight, and every weekday night, Bob Bailey in the transcribed adventures of the man with the action-packed expense account, America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. From Special Investigator Johnny Dollar, location Greensport, Missouri. To the Home Office, Great Plains Guarantee Company, Hartford, Connecticut. Assignment, the Open Town Matter. Expense account continued. Items 5 and 6, 70 cents. A copy of the Greensport Daily Herald and a taxi fare to City Hall. I opened the paper and glanced over the headlines. Murder of police chief still unsolved. City Attorney's Office claims new evidence. Mayor Lyons demands action. I could feel for the mayor. My client stood to lose $50,000, life insurance payable to the dead police chief's widow, Marty Blake. So I wanted action, too. And I was hoping to get it from City Attorney Dave Sherman.
Come in, Mr. Dollar. I'll have a seat.
Thanks.
When did you get in town?
Oh, early this afternoon.
And you've already met Marty Blake. Well, that figures.
Yes, it does. Under the circumstances. Her husband has been killed. He carried $50,000 worth of insurance with my company. And Mrs. Blake filed her claim less than 24 hours after his death.
So that's why you hot-footed it out here from Hartford, huh?
Well, the company figured 24 hours was pretty fast action for a grief-stricken widow.
No? I don't imagine Marty is grieving too much.
No, she's not. She told me that herself.
Marty's about 26 or 7. Ed Blake was in his 50s.
Uh-huh. Money, maybe?
Well, not until he met her. Then he started to make it. Fast. He had to. That's how Marty likes things. Fast.
And then he married her.
Well, then she married him.
Mm.
And now, 8 months later, she's a widow. With an insurance claim for $50,000.
Well, she said she liked things fast.
I know what you're thinking, Mr. Dollar, but you may as well back up and start all over. You're off on the wrong foot.
Oh, how do you mean?
This killing? Oh, sure, it worked out perfect for her and made to order. A man could build a pretty good case against her, especially with that 24-hour insurance claim. Yes, that would really cinch it with a jury.
I pointed that out to her.
Well, I figured as much. Would you mind telling me what happened?
Well, her first move was to start turning on the charm.
Well, that's one of the easiest things she does, if she thinks it might pay off. And after all, with $50,000 in the offing...
Sure.
Did she give you any of the details of the night it happened?
It bored her to death to even talk about it.
Uh-huh. And you thought she was putting on an act to maybe throw you off?
What would you think?
Oh, she wasn't, Mr. Dollar, any more than she was sorry that Ed Blake was murdered.
Then she's pretty cold-blooded.
Well, that's a moot question. Figuratively, yes, I suppose she is. See, she used to be a dancer. Never good enough to make the big time, so she had to, live by her wits and her charm. But you pointed out things that could look pretty black for her if the case ever got to court.
That's right.
Huh? What happened?
She sent me to you.
Why? So I could tell you she didn't kill him.
Well, it adds up, Mr. Sherman.
Yeah, I know.
It was late at night, the two of them alone in the house, her husband shot to death with his own gun.
I know, Mr. Dollar, but not by her.
Why not? That story about the mysterious prowler has been used before, over and over. Matter of fact, I broke one of them not 6 months ago.
Mm-hmm. But in this case, it's true.
How do you know?
Because you were wrong on one point. They weren't alone in the house.
Well, what do you mean? Who else was there?
I was.
Oh, I see.
She's as pure as the driven snow. Well, at least so far as Blake's murder is concerned.
Yeah, kind of a neat setup, isn't it?
Huh?
Instead of prosecuting attorney, you're the star witness for the defense.
Yes, I suppose if it came to that, I'd have to be. I was there when it happened.
So that's why she sent me to you, so I could hear it straight from the horse's mouth.
That's about it.
Well, she couldn't have a much better alibi than the city attorney himself.
Thank you. Oh, she's in the clear, Mr. Dollar.
How did you happen to be there at 2 o'clock in the morning?
I was spending the night. Ed and I were planning to leave early on a fishing trip.
Oh, I see. Like to tell me all about it?
Certainly. We'd all gone to bed around midnight. It was a few minutes before 2 I woke up. I heard Marty and Ed out in the hall just outside my room. I opened my door, and just then Marty snapped on the hall lights. A second later, the shots blasted downstairs, 5 quick ones.
Where was she standing at the time?
By the door of her room, not 10 feet away from me. So you see, Mr. Dollar, she couldn't have done it.
So, that's that. She can thank her lucky stars you were there.
Oh, Marty's always been lucky.
Have you known her a long time?
3 or 4 years. Ever since she came here to Greensport.
You and Blake were pretty good friends, I suppose, huh?
No, as a matter of fact, we didn't have too much use for each other.
Oh?
Oh, I know it doesn't make sense, going fishing together and spending the night in his home, but... Well, I know what you're thinking, Mr. Dollar.
Do you?
Yes, you're thinking maybe I need an alibi as much as Marty does.
Well, it is that kind of an alibi. It works equally well for either of you two.
Yeah, only I don't need an alibi. Blake and I had our little differences, that's true, but they weren't serious enough to be a motive for killing him.
Maybe Marty herself could be a motive.
In what way?
How old are you, Mr. Sherman?
33. Why?
And Marty Blake is 27. And a beautiful girl. Her husband was around 52, I believe.
Wrong guess again, Mr. Dollar. I've known her too long, and what's more important, I know her too well.
Meaning?
Well, sure, she's a knockout. I was nuts about her once. She's summer night, wild honeysuckle and a handful of stars, but there's one great big catch to it.
And that is?
She's got a built-in jukebox, hidden way inside of her, and when you put in money, it plays real pretty music. When you don't, nothing. Ed Blake found out.
And still went on putting in money?
He liked the music.
And that's why he got mixed up in the rackets.
Police chief's salary wasn't... Well, Mr. Dollar, you do get around, don't you?
Was Blake running them or just taking orders?
Now, what makes you think there are any rackets here?
Maybe it was just a guess.
Oh, who told you about them?
It's funny, I can't seem to remember at the moment.
I just bet you can't.
Suppose you answer my question, Mr. Sherman. Who's behind the rackets here in Greensport?
Just a minute.
Who did Blake get his orders from? Or was he the one who gave the orders?
Wait a minute, Mr. Dollar. Just take it easy.
Dave, I wonder if you'd mind going over that report on... Oh, sorry, I didn't know you had...
No, that's all right, Will. Come on in. This is Johnny Dollar. Mr. Dollar, it's Mayor Lyons.
Hello, Mr.
Dollar.
Mayor.
Mr. Dollar's an insurance investigator, Will. He's here to look into Ed Blake's death.
Terrible tragedy, Mr. Dollar. We'll appreciate all the help you can give us.
Well, so far, Mayor, I'm afraid that doesn't amount to very much. The only theory I had just blew up in my face.
Oh? What was this theory?
Well, Mr. Dollar suspected Marty Blake of the killing.
Well, Dave, didn't you tell him that you
Yes, he told me, Mayor. That's when it blew up in my face.
Well, at various times in the past, Mrs. Blake might have been, as one might say, a bit indiscreet. But to consider her capable of cold-blooded murder is utterly unthinkable, sir.
Particularly when she was standing just 10 feet away from the city attorney at the time.
Well, yes, that's true, of course.
Just what is the official theory on the shooting, gentlemen?
Well, at the moment, I'm afraid we haven't any.
I'll tell you, Mr. Dollar. When we find Shorty Wells, we'll have the killer.
Shorty Wells?
A local hoodlum. Blake got him sent up the river a couple of years ago, and Shorty swore that he'd get Blake for it if it was the last thing that he ever did.
Oh, well, now that's a fairly common threat, though, for a criminal to make.
And usually it's nothing but talk. But Shorty was paroled just last week, Mr. Dollar. He was seen around town the morning before the killing. And we haven't been able to locate him since.
I see.
Wells did it all right. There's not the least doubt in the world.
Yeah, it seems to add up, doesn't it?
Yes, and we've got every available man on the lookout for him, but so far no luck. There's not even a trace of him.
Tell me something, Mayor. Would Marty Blake know anything about the rackets her husband was tied in with?
Rackets? Why, that's the most preposterous thing
Well, it's no use. Mr. Dollar's been talking to somebody, and he's found out that our little city isn't as lily white as we'd like to pretend.
Indeed.
It's true, isn't it, Mayor? As I hear it, Greensport is a wide-open town.
May as well admit it, Will. He knows it already. There's no point in trying to lie about it.
All right. It's true, Mr. Dollar. But it's not wide open, as you put it. But there are rackets, as unpleasant as it may be to admit it.
Do you have any idea who's back of them?
I wish to heaven I did.
What about you, Mr. Sherman?
Well, if I had an idea strong enough to talk about, I'd be talking about it in court.
What about this Shorty Wells? Was he in on them before Blake sent him to prison?
Yes, supposedly, but he wouldn't spill a word about the setup at his trial.
Afraid to, maybe, huh?
Probably.
Wells is the key to this whole thing, Mr. Dollar. The rackets as well as the killing. Find Shorty Wells, and we can wrap this thing up in 10 minutes.
Then I guess we better find him. Standard theory number 2. An ex-convict with a grudge. Number 1, young pretty wife, middle-aged husband, big insurance policy hadn't panned out too well. And I wasn't too sold on the second one. It was just too pat somehow. And the fact that Shorty Wells was missing didn't mean much. If I were an ex-con just out of prison and had threatened a man who was later murdered, I'd be missing too. And yet the pat answer was sometimes the right one. The case was still like the town itself, wide open. I walked out of City Hall, started down the sidewalk toward the taxi stand. I didn't know what move to try next. Technically, of course, I was out of it. Since the beneficiary had an ironclad alibi, she'd get paid regardless of who actually did kill Blake. I didn't pay any attention to the horn the first time, but when it sounded again, I turned to look. She was parked at the curb a few yards away. Marty Blake.
I've been waiting for you, Johnny.
Have you?
Yes. I wanted to talk to you.
You didn't earlier.
Well, I guess you just rubbed me the wrong way. You weren't very nice to me, you know.
Sorry.
You've talked to Dave Sherman, I suppose.
Yeah? Yep. He gives you an airtight alibi. Why didn't you tell me he was there that night when I talked with you this afternoon?
I might have. If you'd been nicer to me.
Oh, I see.
You'd have checked it with him anyway.
Yeah, I suppose I would have at that.
Well, now that you know I'm not a murderess, maybe we can get to be friends, Johnny.
You think so?
You're still not being very nice.
I am always politely respectful toward new widows, Mrs. Blake. At least until after the first week.
I told you I didn't care about Ed.
Who do you care about, besides yourself? Shorty Wells, by any chance?
Shorty Wells? Who told you that?
And you know him, huh?
Of course I know him. Because I used to know him.
Where is he now?
How should I know? What are you trying to pull? If you think for 1 minute that you're...
Get down, quick. Are you all right, Mrs. Blake?
Yes, I guess so. Those shots. Johnny, somebody was trying to kill you.
How do you know it was me they were shooting at?
What?
Maybe they were out to kill you, Mrs. Blake.
Now, here's our star to tell you about tomorrow's episode of this week's story.
Tomorrow, an old flame and a new one, and 2 men get burned. One becomes an alcoholic, the other a human torch. Join us, won't you? Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, starring Bob Bailey, is transcribed in Hollywood. Written by Les Crutchfield, it is produced and directed by Jack Johnstone. Be sure to join us tomorrow night, same time and station, for the next exciting episode of Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Roy Rowan speaking. From Hollywood, it's time now for...
Johnny Dollar.
How you making out, Johnny boy?
Who is this?
You disappoint me, Johnny. You ought to recognize the condition, if not the voice.
Joe Crayley?
Yeah, the drunken reporter on the Daily Herald.
I want to talk to you. Where are you?
Oh, no, you don't. Not tonight.
Why not?
In 10 minutes, you'd have me shooting my big mouth off.
About the rackets here?
And the murder of the Honorable Chief of Police, and the peculiar morals of his lovely young wife, and...
Joe, listen.
And last but not least, the ethical and philosophical problems of an intellectual lush, a reformed idealist who once or even twice
Joe,
tried...
an hour ago, in front of City Hall, somebody fired 5 shots at me. Joe, are you there?
Beat it, Johnny. Grab a plane, train, bus, or walk, but get out now. When they put the finger on it, sticks. Greensport, boy, is a wide open town.
Tonight, and every weekday night, Bob Bailey in the transcribed adventures of the man with the action-packed expense account, America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator...
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. From Special Investigator Johnny Dollar, location Greensport, Missouri, to the Home Office, Great Plains Guarantee Company, Hartford, Connecticut. Assignment, the Open Town Matter. Expense account continued. Item 7, $1.85, taxi to the home of the mayor of Greensport, Will Lyons. I decided to go straight to headquarters, so to speak. Joe Crayley, professional reporter and semi-pro drunk, might have been able to help, but I didn't know where to find him. So far, I had a lot of questions, no answers. Police Chief Ed Blake had been shot to death in his own home with his own gun. His young widow, Marty, and City Attorney Dave Sherman had been present and both told the same story, mysterious prowler. Supposedly, the prowler was Shorty Wells, an ex-convict with a grudge against the murdered chief. But Shorty was missing, and the case was at a standstill. So I went right to the top, to Mayor Lyons.
Come in, Mr. Dollar. Come right in.
Thanks.
My wife is going out this evening, committee meeting at the Women's Club. We can talk here in the library, if you don't mind.
All right, fine.
Take a chair there. Yeah, well, Mr. Dollar, I will say it's a pleasure to see you safe and sound.
Oh, you heard about the shooting, then?
I heard the shots from my office. Then the acting chief of police phoned me a few minutes later.
Well, does he know yet who did it?
Not the slightest. There were no witnesses, at least none who cared to talk. Car took off at high speed and then just disappeared.
Like Shorty Wells. Fine.
I sympathize with your feelings, Mr. Dollar. I'd feel the same way if I'd been made a target of. But you can rest assured, sir, that every facility of law enforcement in this town is working round the clock to bring the culprits to justice.
Yeah, well, that's very comforting, Mayor. But actually, I'm not sure I was the target.
What do you mean?
Well, when I left you and Dave Sherman and came out onto the sidewalk, Marty Blake was waiting for me in her car parked at the curb. She'd been there about 20 minutes, she told me.
Yes, but
whoever fired those shots had the setup plan, worked out. And I don't think they could very well have planned it for me.
Why not?
My schedule wasn't predictable enough. They didn't know when I'd leave City Hall, whether I'd be alone or not, or what I'd do when I stepped outside.
It's a point, all right.
Marty, on the other hand, had been there for 20 minutes. Plenty of time to arrange the thing.
But why? Why should anyone want to kill her?
Well, there you got me. I don't know.
After the shooting, of course, I had a police officer assigned to guard duty at her home, but I regarded it as merely a routine precaution. I was certain that the attempt was made on your life, Mr. Dollar.
Well, those bullets came too close to both of us for very much peace of mind.
Well, at least Mrs. Blake has protection now.
Oh, yeah. Unless that police officer himself knocks her off.
Well, you're joking, of course.
Mayor, that's the worst thing about this whole case. I don't know whether I'm joking or not.
But surely you don't think...
And are you certain of which ones you can trust in the attorney's office, the police force, in your own department even?
Not entirely, no.
With the rackets as wide open as they are here, some of the men around you are bound to be involved.
I know. It stands to reason. Every raid we've ever attempted has been tipped off before we even got started. Blake tried while he was alive. Dave Sherman tried. I even organized two myself. Told nobody about them. Brought in state police to carry them out. Same result.
Say, what about Blake? He must have been in with the mob to live on that lavish scale he did.
I suppose so. Dave and I suspected him at times, but we could never turn up any actual evidence.
Were he and the city attorney friends?
Ed and Dave? No, they couldn't get along at all.
And yet, the night Blake was shot, Dave Sherman was staying overnight in his home.
Yes, I know. I've thought myself it was a little odd. Dave says Blake had asked him to. Invited him to go on a fishing trip the next morning.
A fishing trip. And yet they couldn't get along.
I know. I can't explain it any more than you can.
Any chance Dave Sherman was the intended victim that night instead of Blake?
I really don't see how, Mr. Dollar, in view of the circumstances. Blake was killed when he heard a prowler and went downstairs to investigate. No one could have expected Dave to do something like that.
No, I guess not. It was just an idea.
I've thought of all kinds of outlandish possibilities myself, but it always comes back to the same thing. Shorty Wells.
Yeah, the ex-convict who swore he'd get Blake when he went to prison.
He was paroled just the week before, Mr. Dollar, and he was seen in town the day before the killing.
And nobody has found hide nor hair of him since. Yeah, it adds up all right. But somehow I still can't buy it. Maybe it just adds up a little too well. 3/4 of the criminals who are sentenced make threats like that, but it's a rare one who carries it out.
Rare, yes, but not unknown.
Oh, true. I admit he's a strong possibility. But when I hit town this afternoon, I thought Marty Blake was a strong possibility. Until the city attorney himself came up with an airtight alibi for her.
Why did you suspect her, Mr. Dollar?
Insurance. A $50,000 policy on Blake's life. His wife's the beneficiary.
Well, I don't imagine $50,000 will last Mrs. Blake very long.
Hey, tell me something, Mayor. Are she and Dave Sherman close friends?
At one time, yes. In fact, Dave was pretty serious about her. But after she married Blake last year, Dave turned against her completely.
I see.
I don't think he'd risk an alibi for her out of friendship, if that's what you're thinking.
Oh, I don't know exactly what I'm thinking. Mostly I'm just guessing.
I've been doing that 2 years now, Mr. Dollar. Guessing, figuring, trying to spot the leader behind these rackets. Not knowing which officials I could trust.
Mayor, is Dave Sherman one of those you can trust?
I'm not sure.
Good evening, Mrs. Blake.
Well, this is a surprise. Come in, Johnny. Join the party.
Thanks.
Of course, I'm the party. There isn't anybody else. Except my watchdog sitting out there in front.
Yeah, I saw it.
Cute, isn't he?
Oh, I didn't notice.
I did. Think that's terrible, Johnny? A girl who's been a widow 4 days noticing another guy.
Why not? You didn't care anything about your husband.
That's right, I didn't. Here's to all husbands. May they rest in peace. He's a cute cop, all right. You know what? I asked him to come inside and have a drink with me, and he actually blushed and stammered. Now, wasn't that cute?
Devastating.
Would you blush and stammer, Johnny?
No, I'd take the drink. Which I will, by the way, if you don't mind.
Here. Make me another one, too.
All right. What's the reason for this one-woman celebration, Mrs. Blake? I said,
I heard you. And you can call me Marty if you want me to answer you.
All right, Marty. Why the lonesome gal routine?
It's not so lonesome now, Johnny.
Oh. Here's your drink.
Here's to getting shot at.
Shot at how, Marty? Like we were this afternoon? Or like your husband?
Everybody can't be lucky. Maybe Ed just didn't live right.
Well, he's not living anyway now.
I'll bet you know how to live, Johnny.
Oh, sure. I got a system.
Tell me about it.
Well, the first thing I do is hook up with the rackets so I can buy my wife lots of expensive gifts.
Why don't you lay off that stuff? Why don't you try being nice for a change?
Well, that's not part of my system.
I didn't kill him. You know that now. So why don't you relax and be human?
Oh, the last time I relaxed around you, I caught the breeze off of 5 bullets.
You're breathing, aren't you?
I might not be, if they'd been after me instead of you.
So you're still on that kick?
Oh, it figures, Marty. I'm no threat to anybody, not yet. I don't know enough about this mess.
And you're saying I do, I suppose.
I think so. Now, who'd want to get you out of the way, Marty? To keep you from talking, maybe.
Don't you ever give up.
All right, tell me this. Did Dave Sherman really see that shooting? Or is he just giving you an alibi?
Why don't you ask him?
Or is he giving himself an alibi by any chance?
You're crazy.
Maybe. Where's Shorty Wells?
What?
I said, where is Shorty?
I heard what you said.
Well, then suppose you tell me.
Get out.
What are you so upset
Get
about?
out of here right this minute. Get out, or so help me, I'll throw
Take it easy, Marty. What's that cute cop going to think?
I don't care what anybody thinks. You get out of here and get out fast.
Item 9, $14.40. Drinks, tips, and transportation for a local expedition in plain and fancy pub crawling. I was looking for Joe Craley, disillusioned idealist and erstwhile reporter on the Greensport Daily Herald. I found him on my 3rd martini. He was on his 7th.
How, Johnny? How'd you do it?
Do what?
How'd you find me?
Called your paper. They gave me a list of your hangouts. I had 4 more to go.
A reputation is a wonderful thing. Keeps you from staying off the straight and narrow. He's looking at you.
Right. Joe, tell me about Marty.
Tell you what about her?
Everything you know.
What for? She's got an alibi.
Oh, yeah, I know all about it.
But you still won't give up. Well, she hates champagne, but she always orders it. Why? Because it costs more.
I see.
She's every man's dream, Johnny. A pink and gold doll in spangled tights, and she's a 4-star tramp.
She's an ex-dancer, isn't she?
She's an ex-lot of things. Ex-girlfriend of Shorty Wells. Ex-girlfriend...
Girlfriend of Shorty Wells?
Sure. Ed Blake took her away from him. That's why Shorty threatened to kill him. Said Blake was framing him. Maybe he was, I don't know. Anything could have happened with the police they got in this town.
Crooked? Is that what you're trying to say?
Some of them are that. The rest of them are useless. Like that business with the gun.
What gun?
That Ed Blake was shot with. They found it lying beside his body, his own gun. They just assumed he'd shot it out with the killer. It was 2 days before they realized he'd been shot with that gun. That Blake hadn't used it, the killer had.
Wait a minute. Do you think Shorty Wells and Marty could have planned the thing together?
Johnny, I wouldn't put anything past that dame.
Why do you hate her so much, Joe?
Guess again, my friend. I don't hate her. I'm in love with her, always will be.
Joe?
Yeah, before she met Shorty Wells, she used to be my girl. Gives you something to think about, doesn't it, Johnny?
here's our star to tell you about tomorrow's episode of this week's story.
Tomorrow, a man with a gun, desperate, faces a blazing inferno and gambles his life. Join us, won't you? Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, starring Bob Bailey, is transcribed in Hollywood. Written by Les Crutchfield, it is produced and directed by Jack Johnstone. Be sure to join us tomorrow night, same time and station, for the next exciting episode of Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Roy Rowan speaking. From Hollywood, it's time now for...
Johnny Dollar. Hello?
Hello. Johnny?
Yeah, who's calling? Hello?
Hang on a second, Johnny.
Look, what the devil... Is that you, Joe? Joe?
Sorry to keep you waiting, Johnny. I was trying to get all the dope on another phone.
What dope? And how did you sober up so fast?
There's a big story breaking, boy, and lush or not, I'm still a reporter.
Then go somewhere and report. I'm going to bed.
You want to bet?
Now, look, Joe.
Nobody sleeps in Greensport, Johnny. It's a wide-open town. Racket, shootings, a murdered police chief with a lovely widow.
Sure, fine. So what's the big story?
A fire, boy. House burning down. Flames 50 feet high. 3 alarms. Put your clothes on and let's get going.
You get going. The only big story I'll be interested in is when Marty Blake is charged with murder.
Johnny, that's where the fire is. At Marty Blake's.
Tonight, and every weekday night, Bob Bailey in the transcribed adventures of the man with the action-packed expense account. America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. From Special Investigator Johnny Dollar, location Greensport, Missouri. To the Home Office, Great Plains Guarantee Company, Hartford, Connecticut. Assignment, the Open Town Matter. Expense account continued. Item 10, $1.50 for a breakneck taxi ride to Marty Blake's home. Its location marked against the night sky by a pillar of flame visible for a mile. The fire didn't make sense, so it fit in nicely with the rest of the case. None of it made sense. Police Chief Ed Blake, Marty's middle-aged husband of 8 months, had been shot to death in his own home with his own gun. And less than 24 hours later, Marty had filed claim on his $50,000 life insurance policy. She didn't love him and admitted it. Good case. Except for one thing. The city attorney himself was present at the time of the shooting and backed up Marty's story of a mysterious prowler, supposedly ex-convict Shorty Wells. But Shorty was missing, and the whole thing was just a little too convenient, too pat, especially in a wide-open town. Joe Cradley was going to meet me at the fire, but I didn't see him around. The flames had taken a strong hold, and the whole outside of the house was blazing. The firemen couldn't do much except try to control it, keep it from spreading, and to hold back the crowds as they collected on the street and lawns.
Well, how do you figure this one, Mr. Dollar?
Among others present was City Attorney Dave Sherman.
Well, you wanted to get things stirred up. Well, they seem to be stirred, all right.
Were you here when this happened, Mr. Sherman?
Nope, this time I'm not a witness for the defense. I arrived after the fire engine.
Yeah? What about Marty?
She's all right. She got out before it really caught. She's sitting over there in my car.
Then she was here when it started.
Yeah.
Alone?
Well, so it seems.
But there was a police officer on guard earlier.
I thought you meant alone in the house. Yeah, he was out here in front. First thing he knew, flames were breaking out of the windows, and then Marty came running out of the house.
No one had arrived or left?
Well, not that he saw. Well, you're still trying to tag her, huh?
Oh, I'm trying to tag whoever is guilty. She figures, that's all.
Not on the shooting.
No. Oh, not with the alibi you've given her.
Mr. Dollar, look. She was standing 10 feet away from me in the second-floor hall when Ed Blake was shot to death in the dark downstairs. Now, that is not an alibi. It is a fact.
Oh, yeah, sure, I know.
Unless, of course, I'm lying.
All right, are you?
Why?
For old time's sake, maybe. You were in love with her once, Mr. Sherman.
Oh, I could name 24 guys around this town who were. Once.
Yeah. Shorty Wells, for instance.
That's right. That's why Shorty threatened to kill Blake when Blake sent him to prison. He claimed he was being framed out of the way to give Blake a clear field.
Go on.
Well, Shorty's a hoodlum. He was guilty as charged, all right.
But Blake was in on the rackets, wasn't he?
Well, it would seem that way.
Then there's also Joe Craley. Marty was his girl at one time, wasn't she?
That's when he started drinking, when she threw him over.
Why did she throw him over?
For the usual reason. Somebody knew.
Who?
Well, me, I thought. Took me 3 months to find out that I was running interference for Shorty Wells.
All right, so Joe Craley took to drink. What did you take to, Mr. Sherman?
Law enforcement. I set out to break the rackets in this town and get rid of hoodlums like Shorty Wells and all the rest of them.
Yeah, but the rackets are still here.
And I'm still trying, Dollar. Now, look, I want to get one thing very straight.
What?
Ed Blake's killing. It happened just exactly the way I told you. That story is true. Marty didn't do it.
Maybe not. But she's in it some way. She's bound to be.
Well, that's something I wouldn't know.
Everywhere you turn in this case, you keep hearing about Marty Blake. Marty Blake. She's the one link that ties everything together.
Well, maybe.
That fire there. What's the story on that?
Well, why don't you ask her?
I left him standing there, staring into the fire. Staring into his own past, maybe. I didn't know. To me, it was still a puzzle, a question mark. And I didn't have the answer to him. Not much else, in fact. If he was telling the truth, Marty Blake couldn't have killed her husband. And so far, at least, there was nothing to show he was lying. I pushed on through the crowd of spectators, the thrill-seekers, the morbidly curious, followers of fire engines, and walked toward Sherman's car. Marty was sitting there alone, subdued for once and quiet. And she looked scared.
Hello, Johnny. Get in and sit with me.
All right.
Look at it. Isn't it terrible?
Yeah, it is. It'd be worse if you were in it.
Well, I was when it started.
Just how did it start?
I don't know. I think you were right, Johnny, about that shooting in front of the city hall.
Oh?
I think it was me they were after, not you. Now they've tried again.
Possible.
There's no other reason for burning down my home.
Who do you mean by they, Marty? Who?
I don't know. Whoever killed Ed, I guess.
If you know, you'd better tell me while you still can. If somebody is out to get you, if that's what's behind all this, then they obviously mean business.
I don't know, Johnny. I told you that.
Well, how about a guess, then?
Oh, maybe Shorty Wells. I don't know.
Why? Why? The man he threatened is already dead. Why would he go after you?
Maybe to get even. He told me he hated me when I broke off with him. It's just the kind of thing he'd think of doing. Or didn't you know he was in love with me once?
Oh, I knew. I'm asking you, how did the fire start?
I don't know, really. After you left this evening, I lay down on the sofa. I've been drinking, as you know, and I guess I just, went to sleep anyway.
No one else had been there after I left?
No. Anyway, I woke up with smoke all around and flames and all. It was terrible, Johnny. I was just lucky I got out alive.
You always were lucky, Marty.
Joe, what are you doing here?
How about it, Johnny? Are you glad I phoned or not?
Oh, yeah, sure. Wouldn't have missed it for a million.
Has she confessed yet? We can run a new headline on the Extra if she has.
I can do without any remarks from you, Joe.
Sure you can, baby. You're doing fine, just as you are.
Get away from here and leave me alone.
Can't do it, baby. I'm assigned to cover the fire. Got to get all the angles. Human interest. That's you, baby. You are human, aren't you?
You stupid fool.
Financial angles, too. Got one there you might be interested in, Johnny. Did you know the house is heavily insured against fire?
Yes, I know, Joe. I checked through the company report before I left the hotel.
Oh, what of it? What if it is? Most houses are insured against fire, aren't they?
Sure they are, especially by prudent people like you. People who think of everything.
Oh, take it easy, Joe.
Get him away from here, Johnny.
Only you didn't think of everything, baby.
What?
It's too bad your car wasn't in the garage instead of sitting out in the driveway. Then all your assets would have been converted into cash. Nice, green, bloody cash.
Get away from here. Get away and leave me alone.
Why, baby? You can afford me now. You couldn't a couple of years ago. That's why you're tied up with all the other...
What the devil?
They came from the house. Well, there couldn't be...
Ammunition, maybe. Yeah, your husband must have kept boxes of cartridges
Hey,
around
look,
the house.
Look, there by the cellar door.
Somebody's staggering up out of the basement.
Johnny, look. He's got a gun in his hand.
I can't be.
He's fallen down on the ground. Come on, Joe.
Oh, man. When the dam breaks, everything goes.
How could anybody come out of that thing alive?
We Greensporters are tough cookies, Johnny.
Lucky, apparently. He's passed out cold. Another minute and he wouldn't have made it.
His clothes are smoldering there.
Yeah. Let's turn him over and get that coat off.
Right.
Easy now.
All right. Oh, good Lord.
What's the matter?
This is the boy everybody in town has been looking for. Shorty Wells.
Room 604. Greensport City Hospital. Time midnight. The time when the pulse of living starts to slow down. The beginning of the quiet time, when the city sleeps and the nurses and interns walk even more softly. When a ticking clock becomes a drumbeat in the ears of restless patients. The time of crises, when battles for life are fought in silence and won or lost. A battle like that was being fought in 604, witnessed at the moment by myself and City Attorney Dave Sherman.
Well, this is always the tough part. The slow part of waiting it out.
Maybe a long wait, Mr. Sherman. Nearly 3 hours, and he still hasn't regained consciousness.
You know, I can't understand where he's been hiding out since Blake was shot.
Yeah, well, it's hard to tell.
I've turned this town upside down, I tell you. I just can't understand it.
Oh, I can't understand a lot of things. It's just another one of a lot of things about this case that are hard to figure out.
Well, it's tied up with the rackets, that's what I'm sure of.
I'm not sure of anything about this mess.
Yes, if we could just tag the person behind them, we could wrap it up. If we could only... Oh, excuse me. I'll get it. Dave Sherman speaking. Oh, yes, Mayor. Oh, Dr. Morton says he may hang on for a day or two, but as far as pulling through it, he hasn't got much chance. Oh, he hasn't been conscious at all yet. Yes, I'll keep in touch. I'll let you know the minute there's a... All right, Mayor. Good night.
Mayor Lyons, huh?
Yeah. He's a real fuss budget sometimes. He ought to go to bed.
Wait a second. Hey, he's trying to talk. No. False alarm again.
Dollar, do you think he started that fire?
Oh, I don't know. If he did, he got caught in his own trap. I just can't figure what he'd hope to gain by doing
Hi,
anything.
Johnny. Dave.
Hi.
Has he been able to talk yet?
Not yet, Joe. Get your story found?
Just under the wire. Of course, it consisted mainly of questions.
Well, Shorty Wells has the answers. If you were only able to give them out.
I can't figure him firing those shots, Johnny.
I can't either. He fired them before he came out of the blaze. He apparently wasn't trying to shoot anyone.
He couldn't even see anyone the way he's burned.
I'm afraid all we can do is wait. At least we'll know the whole story once he's able to talk.
Suppose he never is able.
Well, he's the only lead we've had. And he's the only one we've got now. The whole case is lying right there on that bed. If Shorty Wells dies without regaining consciousness, then we can drop it and forget it. Because we're beat.
Now, here's our star to tell you about the final episode of this week's story.
Tomorrow, death strikes again, lashes out violently, and mistakes its target. And a wide-open town blows sky high. Join us, won't you? Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours truly. truly Johnny Dollar, starring Bob Bailey, is transcribed in Hollywood. Written by Les Crutchfield, it is produced and directed by Jack Johnstone. Be sure to join us tomorrow night, same time and station, for the next exciting episode of Yours Truly, Johnny Dollar. Roy Rowan speaking. From Hollywood, it's time now for...
Johnny Dollar.
It's me, Johnny.
Marty?
Yeah, how is he?
All about the same. Dr. Morton just gave him another transfusion.
Has he been able to say anything yet?
He hasn't even been conscious. Why, Marty?
Well, who's there with you?
Joe Crayley and the city attorney.
Look, Johnny, I've got to talk to you right away.
All right, go ahead and talk.
No, not on the phone.
All right, it's room 604, City Hospital. Come on over.
Not with them there. Why don't you come meet me?
Because Shorty Wells is the key to this whole case. If he's able to talk before he dies, I want to be here to listen.
Suppose I tell you I'm ready to talk, Johnny.
Are you telling me?
I'm in an all-night lunchroom right across the street from the hospital. Can you come over here?
All right, Marty. I'll gamble with you. Be there in 5 minutes.
Tonight and every weekday night, Bob Bailey in the transcribed adventures of the man with the action-packed expense account. America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. From Special Investigator Johnny Dollar, location Greensport, Missouri, to the Home Office, Great Plains Guarantee Company, Hartford, Connecticut. Assignment, the Open Town Matter. Expense account, final page. I hung up the phone more puzzled than ever, and heaven knows the case had been puzzling from the start. Marty Blake, young widow of the murdered police chief, had been completely uncooperative and unwilling to talk. And now she was reversing her field. Why? Her house had burned to the ground earlier in the evening, and Shorty Wells, number 1 on the city attorney's wanted for murder list, had been found trapped in the flames. Maybe this had something to do with Marty's phone call. She'd been my number 1 suspect at first, since she stood to collect $50,000 as beneficiary of her husband's life insurance. But then the city attorney himself, Dave Sherman, had provided her with an airtight alibi, and I'd reluctantly let her off the hook. Now this. I didn't know what she was up to, and I couldn't afford not to find out.
Something up, Dollar?
Well, that was Marty Blake, Mr. Sherman. She's in a lunchroom across the street. She wants to see me.
Oh, what about?
She didn't say.
Well, go ahead and talk to her if you want to, Johnny. I'll call you if Shorty starts to regain consciousness.
All right, thanks, Joe.
I'm sticking right here myself. This one I'm going to follow personally.
Well, if you really want to break the rackets in this town, your answer is lying right there on that bed, Shorty Wells.
I think you're right, if he's ever able to talk.
And if your police laddies don't fall over their own feet again, the way they did on that gun business when Ed Blake was shot.
That mistake was partly justified, Joe. It was the chief's own gun that was lying beside his body. It was natural to assume that he'd exchanged shots with a prowler.
Yeah, but 2 days to realize he'd been shot with his own gun.
All right. They fouled up, I admit it.
And the ones who aren't stupid are crooked. Every raid you try to pull has been tipped off on the
I
other side.
know it.
Even when Mayor Lyons brought in state police, the whole plan was tipped.
Which you took great pleasure in pointing out in your news
All
story.
right,
and
you guys, look now. I'll leave you two to settle this. Stick on this guy like a leech. And if he shows any sign of coming to and talking, let me know right away, will you?
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah.
I'll see you later.
Back here in the booth, Johnny.
Right. Well, what's on your mind, Marty?
Sit down, Johnny. Here, come on.
Well?
The waiter's in back if you'd like some coffee or something.
No, thanks. Okay, now what is it?
What is what?
You had to talk to me right away. How I talk?
Johnny, I'm not too hard to take, am I?
No, you're a pink and gold doll. Wild honeysuckle and a handful of stars. At least that's what a couple of guys said today.
I don't care what a couple of guys said. What do you say, Johnny?
I guess the description fits, as far as looks are concerned. And if that's all you want to talk about...
No, wait, Johnny. I'm in the clear on this. You know that. The night my husband was killed, I've got an alibi nobody could shake, right?
Well, I'm pretty well convinced you didn't pull the trigger, if that's what you mean.
And you could convince the insurance company, too, couldn't you? If you would.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they'd go pretty much on my report. But I don't see...
Why don't we get this settled and over with? Why don't you be nice, Johnny? And turn in a real good report.
Oh, so that's the pitch.
Well, it's not a pitch. I didn't do it, so why can't you tell them so?
Why don't we get some more answers first to a lot of questions? Explain a few odd angles, maybe.
Like what?
Like the fact that you heard the noise and woke up, that you sent your husband downstairs, that you turned on the light behind him and made him a perfect target for whoever held the gun.
Johnny,
Like the fact that you filed your insurance claim less than 24 hours after your husband was killed. Suppose we hear what Shorty Wells has to say before I make any report.
What if Shorty dies without talking?
Well, in that case, I guess you will be in the clear. Because right now, he's the only lead I've got. Now, if you'll excuse me.
Johnny, make that report. Make it now.
Sorry.
I'll give you $10,000 out of the insurance.
Ooh, you are anxious, aren't you?
I just want to get it settled. Sit down, Johnny, and let's talk about it.
Yeah, Joe, what is it?
Fireman I know just came by the hospital, Johnny. They found out why Shorty fired those shots just before he ran out of the blazing house.
Why?
That cellar door was padlocked on the outside. He had to shoot the lock off to get out.
Then he probably didn't set the fire after all. Not if he was locked in the basement. What about that, Marty? Was he the one who was supposed to die in the fire?
If he was hiding out in my cellar, I didn't know anything about it.
Just another one of those odd angles, huh?
Oh, stop it.
Johnny, by the way, what you want to see me about?
See about? What do you mean?
Oh, yeah, the nurse said you phoned the hospital. Said you wanted me to meet you here. You mean you didn't?
Come on, Joe, let's get back there. Sure, that's why she wanted me to meet her there, to get me away from that room. And somebody phoned and got you away.
Elevator's coming down now, Johnny.
Shorty's the one big threat to whoever's guilty. They know that if he talks, they're tagged. Get up to his room.
I thought...
Mr. Sherman, leaving?
Well, yes, somebody phoned. It's the mayor. He wants me to meet him across the street.
Anybody up there with Shorty Wells?
Well, the doctor will be back in a few moments.
Come on, Sherman, back into the...
Wait a minute! Look, I've got to meet Mayor
Start it
Lyons.
up, Joe. Start it up.
Sixth floor, number 6.
May I ask what's going on here? I haven't got time to go back upstairs. I told you...
I'm afraid you'll have to take time, Mr. Sherman.
It was all right to leave, Dollar. Shorty wasn't showing any signs of coming to.
Did you make sure of that?
Did I... Look, Dollar, I don't get what you're driving.
All right. Come on now, let's go.
Would somebody please let me in on this?
Let's take a look at Shorty first, Mr. Sherman.
Johnny, what happened to that cop who was on duty?
Well, he was here in the hall when I left just a moment ago.
Oh, he could have walked down to... Did you leave that door ajar, Mr. Sherman?
Why, no, of course not.
Come on, but quietly.
What the devil?
Are we interrupting something, Mayor Lyons?
What's
What's he doing with that pillow?
Nothing. I wasn't doing a thing.
You were holding it down over Shorty's face. Get out of the way. I think you were Shorty's dead. You smothered him with that pillow.
No, he was dead when I came in. I was just moving the pillow, Dave.
Did you have to get us all out of this room and then send the police guard away just to move a pillow?
Mr. Dollar, are you suggesting...
Well,
that I
I'm
might...
suggesting it for one. Dollar, I've been sure for months that Mayor Lyons was back of the rackets here, but I didn't have any way of proving it.
Until now, perhaps?
Until now, Mayor.
Very well, don't move, any of you.
Oh, now, wait a minute. That gun isn't really your answer, Mayor. There are 3 of us, you know. You can't get us all.
Stay back, Dollar.
Tell me something. Why did you have Ed Blake killed? Wasn't he one of your own boys?
I can tell you why, now. Ed Blake was going to pull out of the racket, Stoller, and spill the whole setup to me. That was the reason for that fishing trip.
Then it must have been Marty who tipped off Mayor Lyons.
Sure, it figures. She loved that racket money that Ed was bringing home, and Shorty Wells was in town with a grudge against Ed already. Well, it was real convenient for you, wasn't it, Mayor?
As a matter of fact, Dave, it was very convenient.
Then Shorty hid out in the cellar of Marty's house until she decided things would be less complicated if she locked the cellar door and burned the house down.
Marty was a weak link, you might say. Stay back, Dave.
Oh, you better give me the gun now, Mayor.
No, get back.
Do what he says, Mayor. You haven't a chance.
I'm warning you, Dollar, if you try
Yeah, I hear you. But I doubt if you can... Let go of it, Mayor. Drop that gun. Let go of... No! Thanks. Now, if
Look
you
out,
just...
he's getting away. Lock the doors. You'll never stop me from...
Look out, that window!
You tripped!
That's 6 floors down.
Yeah.
Well, he got out of being prosecuted.
As a matter of fact, there's nobody left to prosecute.
You want a bet? She was still sitting there in the lunchroom across the street from the hospital. And she'd heard what had happened. I knew it the second Dave and I walked in, from the half smile of triumph on her face, and from the way she greeted me.
Too bad, Johnny. You should have taken my offer because I don't need your help now. Your company's going to have to pay off. I'm really in the clear now.
You are, huh?
And poor Dave, with nobody left to prosecute.
He still has you, Marty. Accomplice to your husband's murder.
Johnny. Shorty died without talking. Mayor Lyons is dead. No witnesses, no case.
Sorry, Marty. There is a witness.
Oh? Who?
You.
What are you talking about? What's that paper?
Well, you intended it to be an insurance claim. But actually, it's more of a confession. Signed and witnessed.
What?
You were over-anxious, Marty. And you filled it out in complete detail. It says, we found my husband's body at the foot of the stairs.
That's right.
That he'd been shot and killed with his own gun.
Well, it's true, isn't it? That's what happened.
Yeah. But this claim was in the main office of the insurance company less than 24 hours after your husband was killed. The police didn't find out he'd been shot with his own gun until 2 days later. Real neat confession, huh, Marty? Expense account item 12, $310.45. Incidentals in Greensport and transportation back to Hartford. Expense account total, $516.20. End of account, end of report. Remarks? Marty Blake never was able to explain how she knew about that gun. She sure tried. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Now, here's our star to tell you about next week's story.
Before I do that, please let me say thanks to all of you who are so kind about writing and telling us how much you like Johnny Dollar. It's a very gratifying experience. It's encouragement to all of us who are involved in production of the program, and, well, we appreciate your letters more than you know. As always, I'll try to answer you promptly, but sometimes the mail does pile up. In any event, thanks. Thanks very much for writing. Next week, a yacht that wasn't there and a man who wasn't there. They never were, but that's where I found them. Join us, won't you? Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, starring Bob Bailey, is transcribed in Hollywood. It is written by Les Crutchfield and produced and directed by Jack Johnstone. Heard in this week's cast were Gene Tatum, Paul Dubov, Joseph Kern, Stacey Harris, and Russell Thorson. Musical supervision by Amerigo Marino. Be sure to join us on Monday night, same time and station, for another exciting story of Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Roy Rowan speaking.
Alright, that was yours truly, Johnny Dollar, all 5 parts of the Open Town matter. And that wraps us up for today's episode of YT. Bit of a more laid back one, not a lot going on today, just because, recovering from the old road tripping experience.
Yeah, I was gonna say, those 15-minute episodes there, I usually associate that with kind of the end of radio's golden age. A lot of shows switch to the 15-minute format rather than the full half hour towards the end of the years, but Johnny Dollar definitely kind of hit its stride there.
It's kind of was toward the end. This was 1956, but then after this, Johnny Dollar just kept going. They went back to the half-hour shows, although it's more like 20-minute shows, because later on in the show's run, especially towards the end of the series, like late 50s. I believe Johnny Dollar is one of the shows that lasted into the early 60s. But yeah, the shows that hung on into the early 60s, there was a lot of commercials. The actual showtime was cut down to 20 minutes or less, and they really suffered for it, I think. There's some suspense episodes that are like that. They're just really, really short once you take out the commercials.
Yeah, for sure. But I think Johnny Dollar really, I don't know if it's directly caused by that, or they just happened to hit their stride in that time. But yeah, the quality doesn't dip in these episodes.
Yep, we'll be back next week with more Yesterday Today. This has been Jake Westbrook and McLean Westbrook coming at you from the good old studio, where we're glad to be back. And we'll see you around.
I got no funny quips in the episode.
McLean's quipped out today. It's not a quipping day for him.
Quipless. My shipment of quips didn't come in.
Oh, so sad.